Chapter 1890. Meng Yao and Yu Shu, naturally, had an impression of Xin Yan. It was the first time they went shopping with Lin Yi, and Lin Yi stood up for this pretty girl. That pissed off both Meng Yao and Yu Shu. Xin Yan might not have anything to do with Lin Yi, but they didn't have a good impression of this girl. But other than Lin Yi, Bai Wei Tuo, Zhao Xingji, and Song Xiaodao were all wide-eyed. Where did these two school beauties come from? And why did it seem like they had some sort of grudge against Lin Yi and Xin Yan? Lin Yi, Meng Yao said faintly as she looked at Xin Yan. I'm done here, let's go home. Xin Yan looked at Meng Yao, a little surprised. Wasn't Lin Yi's girlfriend Xiao Xiao? Why did Meng Yao sound like she was living with Lin Yi? Could it be that Lin Yi changed girlfriends? No wonder Meng Yao's eyes were so unfriendly. So it was because he was with Lin Yi? I'll be on my way. Xin Yan smiled faintly as she nodded to Lin Yi and left. Lin Yi smiled bitterly. He didn't think that the miss would say something so flirtatious in front of everyone. Back in high school, the miss didn't want people to know that he was living with her, but now that they were in university, she was telling everyone about it. Let's go. Lin Yi shrugged helplessly. Bai Wei Tuo and the others were dumbfounded. So this was Lin Yi's girlfriend? Then Xin Yan. Himeiwe frowned as she looked at Lin Yi, and then at Xin Yan, who was walking away. She couldn't see anything wrong. Wang Xinyan was still as calm as ever, as if what was happening in front of her had nothing to do with her. This confused Himeiwe. Was there really nothing going on between Wang Xinyan and Lin Yi? Lin Yi and Bai Wei all waved their hands and walked toward the parking lot with Miss and Shu. No way. We've all misunderstood? Bai Wei Tuo's eyes widened in disbelief. Living together? No wonder boss didn't come back last night. Song Xiaodao enviously said. Xin Yan, is there really nothing going on between you and Lin Yi? Himeiwe pulled on Xin Yan's arm. Really? Xin Yan shrugged, a bitter smile on her face. We're just friends. Okay, I believe you this time. Himeiwe finally nodded. But I always feel that the two of you are a little ambiguous. It's really pure. Xin Yan joked. Lin Yi, Meng Yao, and Yu Shu came to the parking lot together. Surprisingly, the miss didn't mention Xin Yan anymore. Instead, she talked about something else. Military training the day after tomorrow. Bring me and Shu some first aid medicine. The kind that heals external injuries and detoxifies. Meng Yao said, there will be field training, and I'm worried that something might happen without you around. Okay, but call me if there's any trouble. Lin Yi nodded. Every faculty has a different time, so we probably won't run into each other. Meng Yao said. Plus, Shu and I want to train ourselves. We can't rely on you for everything. You'll leave us sooner or later. Yeah, Shield Bro flirts with girls all the time. He doesn't talk to us anymore. Yu Shu nodded, feeling wronged. So you two are still unhappy about Wang Xinyan. Lin Yi smiled bitterly. There's nothing going on between me and her. Didn't I tell you guys? I took the same train with her when I first came to Songsan. She's kind, so we got to know each other. I know, I didn't say anything. Meng Yao said faintly. But you're doing this to Xiao Xiao. We don't think it's a good idea. Lin Yi frowned at the mention of Xiao Xiao. This wasn't the first time he had this weird feeling. Thinking about Xiao Xiao made Lin Yi feel like he had a girlfriend. Right, Xiao Xiao. She's my second wife. Am I right? Meng Yao and Yu Shu looked at each other. They didn't know how to answer, but Yu Shu nodded. Yeah, why? Then here's the problem. If she's the second wife, then who's the main wife? Lin Yi asked. As expected, here's the problem. The miss frowned. She knew that this wouldn't be solved so easily. There were still some flaws in this medicine. If it was Tang Yin who stayed in Snowy Valley and focused on training, there wouldn't be so many problems. But the problem was that Lin Yi had gone back to his old life. There were some things in his life that reminded him of his memories. It wasn't as simple as just forgetting about Tang Yun. Lin Yi might not be able to remember what he couldn't see. But what about what he could see? Meng Yao and Yu Shu looked at each other bitterly, not knowing how to explain. It seemed like Lin Yi didn't forget that Xiao Xiao was his second wife. Actually, Yao Yao is your main wife, Yu Shu said seriously. Lin Yi was speechless. He didn't believe Shu. Don't listen to Shu's nonsense. I'm hungry, let's go. Meng Yao interrupted, changing the topic for now. When they got home, Grandma's son was busy preparing dinner. Meng Yao, on the other hand, pulled Shu upstairs. Lin Yi didn't ask much. The two were always like this at home. Lin Yi used this time to go out and buy medicine. There were injury medicines, but there weren't that many antidotes. Lin Yi had some with him, and after giving it to Meng Yao and the others, Lin Yi didn't have any left. Naturally, he had to make some more. Meng Yao and Yushu went upstairs. The Miss face was very serious. Shu, Lin Yi seems to have remembered something. What do we do? Yeah, I think so too. Shield Bro seems to have remembered something, but he doesn't remember anything related to Yun Sis. He remembers everything else very clearly. I can't even lie to him that you're the main wife, because he remembers that you're not. Yushu said bitterly. That's right. I can see it too. It doesn't matter if it's you, me, or anyone else. As long as you're with Tang Yun, it's all gone. But the side effects are very obvious as well. It'll cause memory gaps. Meng Yao frowned. What should we do? If we tell the truth, then we'll waste Yun's efforts. But if we don't, Lin Yi will only get more and more suspicious. The School Beauty's personal expert. Welcome readers to log in. Read the whole thing. Chapter 1891. It'd be great if we could get in touch with Xiao Xiao. We'll be able to think of something if we're together, Yushu said. Yeah, you two have the most ideas. Meng Yao nodded. Speak of the devil, and he'll appear. Sometimes, reality was just that coincidental, snowy valley. Tang Yun's parents had been here for a while. Tang Juqing didn't have much of a problem. The ice palace was beautiful, and he could live like a hermit with his wife and daughter. He didn't have to work hard, and he didn't have to worry about food and clothing. Everything was taken care of by the snowy valley. It was just that he wasn't used to having food and clothes at his fingertips. Xiaoming was also a quiet person. Every day, other than cultivating the mental cultivation technique of the Snow Valley with Mother Tang, she lived a quiet life. She was already used to being neglected in the Tang family. Compared to here, where she could walk around freely and see her sister, brother-in-law, and daughter, this was like heaven. But Madame Tang's arrival had brought disaster upon the Snowy Valley. The venerable elder had always thought that she was a snobbish person after practicing heartless tactics. But after meeting Mrs. Tang, she finally understood what snobbery and greed were. Compared to her, Mrs. Tang paled in comparison. Reporting to Elder Zhang on duty, the disciples of the Snowy Valley found 1,000-year snow lotus. A disciple cupped his fist. 1,000-year snow lotus. Yun, isn't that precious? Let's leave it for Lin Yi. Lin Yi is a practitioner too, but he doesn't have that many treasures. We should leave all the good stuff for him. Mrs. Tang was even better than the pig. Whenever the Snowy Valley found something good, she would always bring Tang Yun to the scene. A few black lines appeared on the Grand Elder's forehead. It had only been a few days, and Mrs. Tang had taken over half of the good stuff they found. How were they supposed to live in the future? They weren't familiar with the Snowy Valley now. By the time they got to know each other better, wouldn't Mother Tang have already ransacked the entire Snow Valley's treasury? Mom, you've already saved a lot of good stuff for Lin Yi, Tang Yun said helplessly. I'm not afraid of having too many good stuff. I want this snow lotus, Mrs. Tang said to Elder Zhang arrogantly. Yes, Mrs. Tang. Elder Zhang's forehead was covered in cold sweat. However, even the Grand Elder couldn't do anything about it. How could Elder Zhang stop Mrs. Tang? Mrs. Tang's pet phrase was, if you don't want to give it to me, fine, I'll take my daughter and leave. Go back to find Lin Yi, get married, and have children. Inheritance my ass. If you have the ability, why don't you kill us? Therefore, the Great Elder did not do anything to her at all. The Great Elder had never seen such a snobbish and shameless person in his life. This was simply turning hostile. If things did not go his way, he would threaten to leave, and the Grand Elder could only let him do as he pleased. After all, Shuigu didn't have anything to threaten Tang Yun with now, and Lin Yi's qi deviation had been cured. If Tang Yun insisted on leaving, Shuigu couldn't do anything about it. It wasn't easy to find an inheritor, They couldn't really kill her, could they? And Mrs. Tang was Tang Yun's mother, and they couldn't offend her. If they offended her, Tang Yun wouldn't cultivate properly, and the one who would suffer in the end would be Shui Gu. Moreover, Mrs. Tang wasn't Tang Yun's biological mother, but an adoptive mother, and Mrs. Tang's real daughter was Bing Tang. If they really killed her, wouldn't that girl Bing Tang explode in anger and turn Shui Gu upside down? One had to know that Bing Tang wasn't weaker than the Great Elder, and Bing Tang's cultivation method was obviously better than the Great Elder's. Even the Great Elder didn't have the confidence to win against her. The Grand Elder was filled with hatred. Before Mrs. Tang came, he was the one who threatened Tang Yun. In order to cure Lin Yi, Tang Yun had no choice but to compromise. But when Mrs. Tang came, the situation was completely reversed. Mrs. Tang had become the Grand Elder who threatened everyone. Fortunately, Shui Gu was a big family and didn't lack these things. Mrs. Tang wasn't a greedy person, and she would at least leave half of it for Shui Gu. This made the Great Elder feel better. However, as greedy as Mrs. Tang was, she treated her own people well, especially Lin Yi. Once she decided on him as her son-in-law, even if Tang Yun's status was high now, she didn't have the slightest intention of letting Tang Yun climb up the ladder. In comparison, it was better than the Great Elder's heartless snobbishness. "Mom, that's enough." Tang Yun felt helpless towards her mother. The two mothers' personalities were completely different. "What do you mean, that's enough? I'll go to the Ice Palace tomorrow and ask Bing Tang for more stuff. Doesn't she want to be Lin Yi's little wife? If she doesn't show some sincerity, I won't be on her side," Mrs. Tang said. Puffed. Cough, cough. The Great Elder almost choked to death at Mrs. Tang's words. It wasn't just their family that was going to suffer, but the Ice Palace was going to suffer as well. But this made the Great Elder very happy. Thinking about how Bing Tang was going to suffer as well, she felt that it was nothing for Shui Gu to suffer a bit. Huh? Tang Yun sighed to herself. She didn't tell her mother about Lin Yi's situation, so she didn't know that Lin Yi had already forgotten about her. Tang Yun didn't want her mother to worry, so she kept it a secret. But hearing that her mother was going to the Ice Palace made her feel uneasy. Xiao Xiao probably didn't know about Lin Yi's situation yet, and if her mother really went to the Ice Palace and Xiao Xiao contacted Lin Yi, wouldn't her efforts be wasted? Tang Yun knew that her mother was probably just saying it casually, and the chances of her going to the Ice Palace was close to zero, but she didn't want to take the risk. As she practiced heartless arts, the coldness around Tang Yun became thicker and thicker, and she had a cold and emotionless aura around her, making people feel like they couldn't get close to her. Only people who practiced the same element would be less affected, and Lin Yi practiced an extreme yang element, so there was no chance of him being with her. Tang Yun finally understood why heartless arts was called heartless arts. Only a person who was disheartened and wanted to forget his feelings would create such a mental cultivation method and mnemonic chant. Tang Yun didn't feel anything wrong at first, but as her strength increased, every time she thought of Lin Yi, the sweetness of the past, she'd feel as if her heart was being cut by an ice knife. It was like blood was dripping, and the pain was unbearable. Tang Yun knew that this might be the result of not taking the senseless grass's medicinal liquid. The School Beauty's personal expert welcomed readers to log in. Read the full article. Chapter 1892. Right now, she was only at the peak of the early phase of Golden Class, and it was already so unbearable. The path ahead would only be more painful. Plus, this was a situation where Tang Yun had accepted the inheritance before training. If she wasn't an inheritor, it would be even more painful to break through the barrier during training. It was practically a torture for a person. But even without the barrier, it was still very painful for Tang Yun to train. However, she didn't tell anyone about her pain, not even her mother or the Grand Elder, because she knew that this was her own choice, and it was the choice she had made. Every time she finished her training, she would think about how she would become a master, someone who could stand shoulder to shoulder with Lin Yi. She would feel happiness from the bottom of her heart. I can be as strong as you. I can be your helper. Although it's impossible in reality, But in my dreams, I will fight alongside you. I won't be your burden anymore. I'll be your pride. When the ancient sects communicated with each other, they still maintained the ancient tradition of writing letters. But when it came to important matters, they had the newest high-tech communication method, satellite phones. There was no cell signal in the inner sect of the Snowy Valley, and there were no landlines either. But satellite phones were unimpeded. Of course, only when an elder or a sect leader had something important to discuss would they use the satellite phone. Sister Shui, can I use the satellite phone in the valley? Tang Yun found Sydney, wanting to borrow the phone to call Xiao Xiao. She was afraid that her mother would mess things up first. Satellite phone? You want to call? Shueli looked at Tang Yun strangely. Tang Yun's parents were already here. Who was Tang Yun calling? I want to call Xiao Xiao, Tang Yun said. Xiao Xiao? You mean the Ice Palace? Sydney's expression tensed up. The Snowy Valley hadn't told the Ice Palace about finding an inheritor yet. They wanted to show off after Tang Yun became a sky class. That would be shocking. After all, Tang Yun trained after receiving the inheritance. Compared to Feng Xiao Xiao's inheritance, it was much faster because Tang Yun didn't have the barrier of a practitioner's level. It wasn't that her path of cultivation would be smooth sailing, but Feng Xiao Xiao's inheritance was much faster. But at least it was rain or shine. So when the Snow Valley suddenly took out an inheritor with the strength of a peak late-stage heaven stage, it would naturally be more shocking than now. He didn't think that Tang Yun would call him right now. But Sydney thought about it carefully. With the relationship between Tang Yun, Xiao Xiao, and Bingtang, this matter couldn't be hidden for long. After all, Bingtang's birth mother lived in the Snow Valley. It was possible to hide it for a while, but it would be difficult to hide it for a long time. Plus, Mrs. Tang had said that she went to the Ice Palace today and took all the treasures for Linny. How could she not talk about Tang Yun's situation? Compared to that, he might as well go and shock the little girl, Bingtang, and let her know that the Snow Valley also had an inheritor. Yes, it's her, Lin Yi's concubine. Tang Yun smiled. Sydney frowned. She didn't know how good Linny was. Why did so many people like him? But this was other people's business, and Sydney couldn't say much. She just said, "Okay, Tang Yun's sister. I will discuss it with the Grand Elder, but it should be fine. Yes, thank you." Tang Yun nodded. "No need to thank me. You are the future Grand Elder. In the Snow Valley, your position is not lower than mine. You are welcome." Sydney shook her head. At first, she treated Tang Yun well, because Tang Yun brought benefits to the Snow Valley. But as they got to know each other, Sydney found that Tang Yun was a person who was easy to get along with. At least she didn't have any arrogance, because she was an inheritor. In fact, with Tang Yun's status in the Snow Valley, even if her words did not carry enormous weight, she could at least override Shui Li's authority. However, Tang Yun did not do so. She was still polite to Shui Li, without a trace of arrogance. "Why don't we go together?" Tang Yun was a little impatient. She was afraid that her mother would call Bingtang first, and Xiao Xiao would contact Lin Yi. That would be a big deal. One had to know that Mrs. Tang wouldn't listen to others. If she wanted to make a call, even the Grand Elder couldn't stop her. Although everyone knew that she was just saying that she would take Tang Yun away, no one dared to provoke her. "Okay," Sydney said. "Then let's go together." When they arrived at the Great Elder's room, Shui Li briefly explained Tang Yun's idea to the Great Elder. The Great Elder nodded without hesitation and said, "All right, Shui Li, give Bingtang a call first and show the power of our Snow Valley. Then let Yun talk to Xiao Xiao." Okay. Sydney was also angry. Last time, she was rejected by Bingtang. This time, she wanted to show Bingtang that the Snow Valley could find an inheritor even without the help of the Ice Palace. The satellite phone of the ancient sects wouldn't be used easily. Once it was used, it would be a big deal. The phone was brought to Bingtang, and Qing said, "Palace Master, there's a satellite phone." Bingtang nodded and picked up the phone. "Hello, I'm Bingtang." The people who could use this phone were the heads or elders of the ancient houses and sections. So when Bingtang picked up the phone, she didn't show any disrespect or arrogance. After all, the people on the other side were on the same level as her. "Sect leader, I am Shui Li," Shui Li said straightforwardly. "So it's the Snow Valley Master. What do you want?" Bingtang was curious. She had just rejected Sydney not long ago. Why was she calling again? Hee, it's nothing. I just want to tell you that the Snow Valley has an inheritor, and she has already comprehended the power of the Snow Valley's inheritance. Shueli's tone was calm, but everyone could hear the pride in her voice. What? There's an inheritor? And he learned the inheritance? Bingtong's eyes widened in shock. The Snow Valley finding an inheritor was already a great thing, but to learn the inheritor, that was a very difficult thing to do. Even Xiao Xiao and Bingtang couldn't guarantee that they'd be able to accept the inheritor. After all, the inheritance was about understanding the power of the heavens and earth. It depended on luck and coincidence. It wasn't guaranteed to succeed. Yes, sorry, but our Snow Valley was a step ahead of you. Sydney smiled, Palace Master Bing. Thank you for rejecting me last time. Otherwise, we might have wasted a talent. The School Beauty's personal expert welcome readers to log in. Read the full article. Chapter 1893. Sydney was speaking the truth. If Bingtang had agreed to Sydney's suggestion, then Sydney and the Grand Elder would have been so happy that they would have given the fruit to Tang Yun and let them leave. There wouldn't be any inheritance then. But these words sounded like sarcasm to Bingtang. Bingtang humphed. Then I'll have to congratulate you. Congratulations to your Snowy Valley. You'll be the guest of honor there. Go to Heaven Class Island together. Haha. But we really have to thank you for this. In the future, our Snowy Valley and Ice Palace will be even closer. Sydney said, What do you mean? Bingtang frowned, not understanding what Sydney meant. Snowy Valley and Ice Palace used to be one family thousands of years ago. They both originated from that place, but the two sects fought and supported each other. To say that they were closer was a bit strange. Our Shuegu's future Supreme Elder will be your younger sister, cousin, and cousin. That's almost the same as your biological sister. Don't you think it's closer than ever? Shueli said proudly. Shuegu finally had a chance to vent his anger. Naturally, Shueli would not let it go. You mean Tang Yun? Bingtang paused and immediately thought of Tang Yun. But she was a bit doubtful. How did Tang Yun become the inheritor? Her body? That's right. We have to thank your Ice Palace for leaving such a talent to our Snowy Valley. Sydney smiled. As far as I know, her body isn't anything special. Bingtang paused as she thought of something. Could it be the legendary hidden Ice Heart Jadebone body? That's right. Sydney said, it is the rare hidden Ice Heart Jadebone body. It's the same as our Grand Elder. She directly opened the inheritance in the Snowy Valley. Why did she go to the Snowy Valley? Bingtang was curious. Although the Ice Palace had their own information channels, they didn't find out that Tang Yun stayed in the Snowy Valley. Of course, this was a secret. After Lin Yi came back, no one mentioned Tang Yun again. The Ice Palace naturally wouldn't know the real reason. I'll let little sister Tang tell you the details. Sydney let out a sigh of relief. Naturally, she didn't want to explain the reason. It was better for Tang Yun to explain. With that, Sydney handed the phone to Tang Yun. Bingtang's sis. Tang Yun took the phone. Yin, it's really you. Rock Candy took a deep breath in disbelief. But the truth was right in front of her eyes. She had no choice but to believe it. Tang Yun actually had the hidden heart of ice and jade bones. It was even stronger than his fake ice heart jade bone physique. However, it could only be discovered in a place like the Snow Valley. In the Ice Palace, it would probably never be discovered, not to mention accepting the inheritance. Yes. Bingtang sis, I stayed in the Snow Valley. Tang Yun told Bingtang everything that happened during this period of time. So that's how it is? No wonder you could accept the inheritance under such circumstances. Rock Candy said, but Lin, never mind. You talk to Xiao Xiao. Rock Candy didn't want to say anything about Lin, Yi, and Tang Yun. She didn't expect that Tang Yun would make such a sacrifice, giving the forgetfulness herb to Lin, Yi, and letting her face the pain of yearning alone. This wasn't something a normal person could do. Xiao Xiao heard that it was a call from Tang Yun and ran over, taking the phone from Tang Tang's hands excitedly. Tang Yun, sis. Xiao Xiao. Hearing this familiar voice, Tang Yun's heart warmed. It feels so good to be able to hear your voice again. Yes, Tang Yin sis, I'm good now. When I become a Sky class, we'll go back and play 3P with Lenny Honey, Xiao Xiao said excitedly. Rock Candy, on the other hand, was speechless. Qing smiled but didn't say anything. Tang Yun, on the other hand, couldn't help but cry after hearing this. If it were before, she would be really shy when she heard Xiao Xiao say this, but now. Xiao Xiao's suggestion was a distant dream. Even if Tang Yun wanted to and agreed to it, it was impossible. Xiao Xiao, listen to me. I might not be able to be with you guys anymore. Tang Yun said sadly. Tang Yun sis, what's wrong? Xiao Xiao paused and asked. Tang Yun smiled bitterly and told Xiao Xiao what she said to Rock Candy. Xiao Xiao cried out in shock. You're saying that you gave Lin Yi's husband the forgetfulness herb? Doesn't that mean he won't remember you anymore? How are we going to do 3P then? You go play with Yao Yao and Shu. I'm afraid that when my heartless arts reaches its peak, you guys won't like me anymore. Tang Yin said helplessly and sadly. Who would like someone with a cold aura around them? Someone who made people want to stay away from them? Tang Yin sis, is there really no other way? Xiao Xiao started to feel sad as well. No, unless my heart doesn't change and Lin Yi doesn't hate me, or maybe he's not afraid of this cold aura that makes people want to stay away from me. Then maybe there's a chance. Tang Yin was just saying it casually because she knew that the possibility was too small. Then, doesn't that mean that I can't do it? I'm training in the ice element too. Xiao Xiao said, shocked. We're different, the merciless arts. It can make people emotionless, not just Lin. Maybe it's the same for me. Tang Yun smiled bitterly. I heard that you can't have love in the later stages of the merciless arts. Otherwise, it'll be useless, I see. Xiao Xiao was very sad and sympathetic then. What should I do now? Xiao Xiao, what you need to do now is to work with me and make Lin Yi forget me. That's the biggest help and comfort for me. Tang Yin said, if I make Lin Yi remember me, I really don't know if he'll come to Snowy Valley again and forcefully take me away. That won't do either of us any good, and he won't be able to fight against the ancient sects, and I don't want to go back on my words. This is something I promised Snowy Valley of my own accord. The Grand Elder and Sydney relaxed after hearing Tang Yun's words. They'd been scared to death by Mrs. Tang these days, afraid that she'd take Tang Yun away in a fit of anger, and that'd be a huge loss for Snowy Valley. But now that they knew Tang Yun's feelings, they were relieved. The School Beauty's personal expert welcomed readers to log in. Read the whole thing. Chapter 1894. Resolutely give Yupis for Mrs. Tang. She could take whatever she wanted. Snowy Valley had a strong foundation, and she wasn't an outsider anymore. As long as Tang Yun really became the Grand Elder of Snowy Valley, then Tang Yun would have a part of everything. Oh, I see. Xiao Xiao didn't really want to, but she knew that if she told Lin Yi the truth, she'd be harming Lin Yi and Tang Yun. With Lin Yi's personality, he might really do something out of line. Thinking back to when Lin Yi brought her to the Ice Palace, he wouldn't budge an inch in front of Bingtang, even bringing up the 2-year agreement. How could Lin Yi just let Tang Yun go like that? Yeah, I've talked to Yao Yao and Shu already. You guys, help me take care of him. Perhaps one day, we'll meet again, but at that time, I'll be watching you guys from the back, wishing you all the best. Tang Yun said. Man, Xiao Xiao shook her head helplessly and didn't say anything else. It was hard for her, but this was Tang Yun's decision. She knew that this might be the best solution for Lin Yi and Tang Yun. Don't worry. I'll get in touch with Yao Yao and Shu and help you hide it. Okay, thank you, Xiao Xiao. Tang Yun said sincerely. What are you thanking me for? I should be thanking you. If it weren't for your tolerance, I wouldn't be the Xiao Xiao I am now, Xiao Xiao said emotionally. If I wasn't Lin Yi's husband's mistress, I wouldn't be in the Ice Palace. We're family, so let's not talk like that. I can't contact Lin Yi anymore, but I can still contact you. If there's any news about Lin, remember to tell me. Tang Yun said. Okay. Xiao Xiao nodded quickly. I'll call Tang Yun sis first. Okay. That's all for now. We'll keep in touch. Tang Yun said. After hanging up, Tang Yin silently returned the satellite phone to the Grand Elder. Ah, this is your decision. I can't stop you. But, Tang Yin, tell me, are you really ready? The Grand Elder took over the phone and asked with a serious expression. Yes, I'm ready. Tang Yin nodded heavily. Even if the path of cultivation is full of obstacles and thorns, I will face it calmly. Because he is in my heart. As long as I think of him, I will have the courage to face all difficulties. Since you have chosen to walk down this path, then persevere. The Great Elder nodded. This is just the beginning. The future will be even more difficult, but I believe that you will walk down this path, because you're the second person who has a hidden heart of ice and jade bone since the founding of the Snow Valley. Perhaps, with your body type, you do not need the medicinal liquid of the senseless grass, because you are right, the founder did not consume the medicinal liquid of the senseless grass. Thank you, Grand Elder. Tang Yin was pleasantly surprised when she heard the Grand Elder say that she didn't need to let go of her feelings anymore. No need to thank me. You chose your own path. The Grand Elder shook his head. But there's something I have to remind you in advance. Please speak, Grand Elder. Tang Yin said. Although the Heartless spell was created by the founder of the sect, she did not cultivate it to the 10th level. She was stuck at the peak of the 9th level for her entire life. The Great Elder said, perhaps this is also the reason why she did not take the senseless herb's medicinal liquid. Tang Yin paused. This Heartless arts was created by the founder, but she did not reach the 10th level. Tang Yin just couldn't believe it. A person created an incantation, but she didn't practice it to perfection. How did she create it? The founder was a person with great wisdom and power. You can't use common sense to judge her, the Grand Elder said. The Grand Elder said, actually, it's the same logic as alchemists. Some people are very familiar with medicinal properties and can change the pill formula at will, but if you really ask him to refine the pill, he can't refine it. Could it be that the Grand Elder is talking about armchair strategists? Tang Yin asked, stunned. You could say that, but the founder wasn't an armchair strategist. If this Heartless arts was trained to the 10th level, it would be a heaven-defying skill. The Grand Elder said seriously. Turning water into ice, turning ice into mist, all it takes is a thought. You can use the power of heaven and earth as you wish. If you train it to perfection, one water inheritor is enough. You don't even need 3. Plus, you'll be more confident when you do that thing. Sky Class Island? Tang Yun's face changed. She knew from Lin Yi what Xiao Xiao had to do as an inheritor, but she didn't know the details, only the general idea. That's right, it's Sky Class Island. The Grand Elder said, if you train to the 10th level, you'll have more confidence in opening Sky Class Island, at least with the water element. Sky Class Island. What is it? How do I open it? Tang Yin asked. That, I don't know. The Grand Elder shook her head. That's news from that place. They didn't say the specifics, and I only have a general idea. Maybe you'll know when you become a Sky Class late phase peak. That place. Tang Yin paused. She didn't know what the Grand Elder was talking about. You'll get your answer in the Sky Class meeting, the Grand Elder said. If you haven't broken through by the 9th level peak, then you can consider whether or not you want to use the Forgetful Grass. So you're saying that even if I don't use the Forgetful Grass, it won't affect me much? Tang Yin asked. That's right. There's Xiao Xiao from the Ice Palace. In that place, I heard that they've already prepared a water element inheritor. We have water, mist, and ice elements, and the 9th level peak is enough. The Grand Elder said regretfully. But the power of the 10th level is something you can't imagine. If you really make it to the 10th level, even if you don't surpass Sky Class, you'll at least become the #1 in Sky Class, the #1 in the world. The power of Heartless Arts shocked Tang Yin. If she really made it to the 10th level, then she'd become Lin Yi's biggest helper. Didn't that mean? No. If she used the Heartless Grass, how would she remember Lin Yi? With that thought, Tang Yin gave up on that idea. Target equals _blank. Chapter 1895. Chapter 1907. Xiao Xiao's solution being the strongest in the world evidently didn't appeal to her. In her heart, she only wanted to remember that little bit of happiness that belonged only to her. That sunny day under the tree, Lin Yi personally put the engagement ring on her. He didn't remember it anymore, but it was enough that she remembered it. Seeing the gentleness and happiness in Tang Yun's eyes, the Grand Elder and Sydney shook their heads at the same time. It seemed that this huge attraction wasn't as important as a memory. All right, I won't say anymore. Li, tell Elder Zhang to give Tang Yun a satellite phone so that she can contact the Ice Palace at any time. Since the Grand Elder approved of Tang Yun's choice, he didn't restrict her from contacting the outside world. Of course, this phone could only reach the Ice Palace. Xiao Xiao called Meng Yao immediately after the call with Tang Yun. She couldn't wait to find someone to share her depressed feelings with. Yushu paused as she looked at the weird number on her phone. Hello, Shu? It's Xiao Xiao. Xiao Xiao said. Oh, Xiao Xiao. Yushu cried out. Yao Yao, it's Xiao Xiao calling. Oh, Xiao Xiao. Meng Yao was surprised as well. I just mentioned Xiao Xiao, and she's calling? Yeah. Yushu nodded. Xiao Xiao, did you miss us? Of course, we're a prankster duo. Xiao Xiao said. And Yao Yao and Lenny Honey too. All right, do you know about Tang Yun, sis? Yushu hadn't even been happy for 2 minutes when she remembered Tang Yun's situation. Her heart sank, and her excitement waned. I know. Xiao Xiao was silent as well. Tang Yun, sis, just called me. She contacted you? Yushu blinked. Why didn't she contact me? We ancient sects have our own ways of contacting each other, but her situation is a bit stricter than mine. I can call whenever I want, but she can't. Xiao Xiao said. She called me this time to talk about Lin Yi's husband. Yeah, Yao Yao, and I want to talk to you about Shield Bro as well. Yushu said. Oh, you're looking for me too? Xiao Xiao blinked. What about Lin Yi? What happened to him? Are you in trouble? Trouble. I did, but it's over now. Yushu shook her head. So you did run into some trouble. Thank goodness you're fine. Xiao Xiao relaxed. So you're looking for me? It's like this. Although Shield Bro used the forgetfulness herb and forgot about Tang Yun, sis, there seems to be a gap in his memory. Yushu said. Fault? Vacancy? What do you mean? Xiao Xiao didn't quite understand what Yushu meant. Yushu sighed and didn't know how to describe it more accurately. It's like this, to be more specific, all of Shield Bro's memories of Tang Yun, sis are gone, which means that no matter if it's you, me, Yao Yao, sis, or anyone else related to Tang Yun, sis, Shield Bro doesn't remember anything, but he remembers you, me, Yao Yao, sis, and everyone else, but he doesn't remember Tang Yun, sis. Is there a problem with that? Xiao Xiao didn't think there was anything wrong with what Yushu said. Naturally, there's a problem, Yushu said. Yushu said, Shield Bro, he knows you're his small wife, so he's thinking, who's his big wife? But he doesn't remember, so he asked Yao Yao and I. Luckily, we interrupted him, or else he'd ask again, and we wouldn't know how to explain. It's fine once, but if it happens too many times, it'll be a problem. I see. Isn't that easy? Yao Yao, sis always wants to be the big wife, right? Then just tell Lenny Honey that Yao Yao, sis is the big wife, Xiao Xiao said after some thought. Xiao Xiao said after some thought. Meng Yao had taken advantage of the situation, but Xiao Xiao didn't have any thoughts of going against them right now. In order to not waste Tang Yun's efforts, Meng Yao had taken advantage of the situation. It was a happy ending. No way. Yushu shook her head. I wanted to do that before, but Shield Bro doesn't remember Tang Yun, but he remembers our relationship. He almost thought I was sick last time. That's true. Xiao Xiao frowned. This was a problem. If there was a small wife, then there had to be a big wife. So who was the big wife? So, Yao Yao and I were thinking about discussing it with you. Yushu said helplessly. Let me think. Xiao Xiao thought about it carefully. After a while, she asked, you're saying that Lenny Honey doesn't remember what happened between me and Tang Yun, sis, right? Yes. He doesn't remember anything like that at all. Yushu nodded. Then, he probably doesn't remember what we talked about Tang Yun, sis, right? Xiao Xiao continued. That should be it. He doesn't remember anything related to Tang Yun, sis. Yushu said. That's good, I've got an idea. Xiao Xiao said suddenly. What idea? Yushu asked quickly. Let's say that I'm the one who pestered Lin Yi Honey to chase after him. Xiao Xiao said. Isn't that how it is? Yushu was confused. It's not the same, listen to me, Xiao Xiao said. Then you tell Lenny, honey, that he doesn't like me. So, I asked to be the small wife, allowing him to find the big wife he likes and have a threesome with him. Will that work? Yushu hesitated. Lin, he wasn't an idiot. Couldn't he see the problem? Of course. When Lenny, honey, took me in, it was because of Tang Yun Sis's help. He doesn't remember anything about Tang Yun Sis now, so he'll only remember that I chased him. As for how he agreed to it, he definitely doesn't remember, so there's a lot of stuff going on here. Xiao Xiao said. Doesn't that just benefit Lin? Yushu put Ming Yao's ear on the phone as well after getting the call. Ming Yao heard Xiao Xiao say that she wanted Lin to find a big wife. Didn't that mean that Lin had another woman? And so, Ming Yao gasped subconsciously. Chapter 1896. Overjoyed, but after saying that, Ming Yao felt like she was being too nosy. Tang Yun and Xiao Xiao didn't have any objections. Why would she care? I don't have a choice. This is the only way I can think of. Otherwise, I really don't know how to deal with him. Xiao Xiao didn't really care about Lin having a big wife. She was a small wife, and she had already accepted the fact that Meng Yao and Yushu would become Lin Yi's women in the future, so she came up with this idea. Meng Yao was silent. Indeed, only Xiao Xiao's method could explain why Lin didn't have a main wife and had a main wife. Lin remembered how Xiao Xiao had chased him, and if she just randomly come up with an excuse saying that she was a second wife, he probably wouldn't have believed her. He remembered that Xiao Xiao was a second wife, and it wasn't a joke. That was why he'd asked so seriously. It seems like this is the only way. We really can't think of anything else. Meng Yao helplessly accepted the reality. But, Yao Yao, you could try a little harder, okay? We told him to find a big wife, but he doesn't have one yet, right? If you become his big wife, wouldn't that be fine? Xiao Xiao could tell that Meng Yao wasn't in a good mood. I don't think I can. Let him find someone else. Meng Yao said subconsciously, but regretted it immediately after. Why couldn't she become Lin Yi's big wife? But she'd already said it, and she couldn't go back on her words. You guys take care of it. Xiao Xiao didn't mind. All right, let's talk later. I need to go train. Time's up. Aren't you going to talk to Lin Yi? Meng Yao asked. I won't. Xiao Xiao hesitated before shaking her head. I promised Rock Candy that I wouldn't contact Lin Yi until he successfully makes the Ice Heart Jade Bone pill. I can't go back on my words. All right, let's keep in touch then, Meng Yao said. Can I call this number? No, this number is encrypted. You can't call in. Xiao Xiao shook her head. There's no cell signal in the Ice Palace, but only Ancient Sect have satellite phone numbers. The reason I'm calling you guys is because of Bingtang Sis and Aunt Qing's trust in me, but I can't tell you this number. Yeah, it's fine. We don't really have anything to do. Meng Yao stopped asking after hearing the reason. I will contact you regularly. By the way, you said you encountered some trouble just now? What's going on? Xiao Xiao remembered what Shu said about the trouble. It's actually like this. Meng Yao simply explained the trouble they'd run into, and it wasn't as scary as Yushu's. Meng Yao's words sounded a little flat. But even so, Xiao Xiao could hear the danger in it. That's scary. If Lin Yi honey didn't explode, wouldn't he be in danger? Xiao Xiao said. Yeah, but there was nothing we could do. I wanted to contact you back then, but I didn't have a way to contact you. Meng Yao said helplessly, but at least we're out of danger now. I wish I could help you guys so much, but my strength is still too low. Xiao Xiao was a weird person, but she sighed because of her strength. Bingtang Sis. Maybe she'd help if I begged her, but she'd look down on Lin Yi and break that 2-year promise. Meng Yao and Yushu were silent. They didn't know if the inheritor was in danger, but Tang Yun was already the inheritor, and Lin Yi had forgotten about her. But if Xiao Xiao were to become the inheritor, then Lin Yi wouldn't just let it go like that. If he sacrificed Xiao Xiao to save Lin Yi, then Lin Yi wouldn't be happy either. It was a bit of a headache. Luckily, they didn't contact Xiao Xiao, and luckily Lin Yi was out of danger by himself. But if I'd known, I'd still ask her to help. Worst case scenario, I'd just become the inheritor. If Tang Yunsis can do it, so can I. Xiao Xiao smiled. All right, it's all over now. Let's not talk about these depressing things. Meng Yao shook her head. Xiao Xiao, go do your thing. I'll discuss with Shu how to explain this to Lin Yi the next time he brings it up. Hanging up, Meng Yao sighed softly. She had to find a big wife for Lin Yi just like that. She really didn't want to, but she had no choice. Xiao Xiao's suggestion was the only solution. Lin Yi had entered the Jade Space long ago and started practicing the second stage of the art of Dragon Mastery. This feeling of accumulating made Lin Yi feel like he was back in the mountains when he was practicing the first stage of the art of Dragon Mastery. It was the same feeling he had back then, feeling the chi flow in his body getting faster and faster under the activation of the arts. But the amount of chi he was absorbing wasn't much. More accurately speaking, Lin Yi didn't have that crazy absorption feeling he got from the first stage of the art of Dragon Mastery, and so his leveling speed was slowing down. But Lin Yi also noticed the positive. While the absorption speed was slower, the energy converted by the second stage of the art of Dragon Mastery was purer. In other words, the amount of energy Lin Yi absorbed was less, but the converted energy was more refined. This made Lin Yi's Earth Class early phase start to loosen up a little, and he was getting closer to Earth Class early phase peak. When Lin Yi noticed this, he couldn't help but be overjoyed. If it weren't for this, Lin Yi would have switched back to the first stage of the art of Dragon Mastery, because the first stage absorbed a lot of chi. But now it seemed like it was pointless. The energy consumption was a little too high, and the efficiency was too low. But while he was happy, he was also depressed. The happy part was that Lin Yi's strength had increased, but the depressed part was that the second stage of the art of Dragon Mastery seemed to be stuck at the early stage. When Lin Yi used it, he wasn't very familiar with it, and it didn't feel as smooth as the first stage. Of course, he'd only been training for a couple of days, and he knew that it wasn't wise to bite off more than he could chew. His strength had to be increased bit by bit, not all at once. Elder Jiao had already told him to take it easy and steady, so there was no point in thinking about that unrealistic speed. Chapter 1897. Chapter 1909. News of Pangolin the next morning. Lin Yi drove Meng Yao and Yushu to school. Lin Yi, on the other hand, didn't have much to do. Medicine majors didn't have to participate in the student council election, and the class president of the major had to be a member of the school's student council. As for the faculty student council, he could get a position there anyways, so he didn't have to worry about the election at all. That was the benefit of being a minor. The other majors, on the other hand, had to participate in the election if they wanted to enter the student council or faculty student council. After all, there was a limit to the number of people in each major. Meng Yao and Yushu went to participate in the election, and Lin Yi went back to the dorm with nothing to do. He knew that the three perverts would ask him some questions, but Lin Yi didn't think that he'd be surrounded the moment he entered the room. I say, Lin Yi boss, that's not very nice of you. Was it your girlfriend looking for you yesterday? You're living with her? And you lied to us that you're staying with your relative? Song Xiaodao started yelling when he saw Lin Yi enter the room. Big bro Lin, you're amazing. I always thought that Wang Xinyan was your girlfriend, but now it seems that your girlfriend isn't worse than Wang Xinyan at all. Bai Weituo said, I think that this year's school beauty ranking is also on it. School beauty list? What's that? Lin Yi asked. Oh, it's just some students who have nothing better to do at school. S and the department's QQ group have selected the freshman campus bell list. There is information and a brief introduction for us boys to refer to. Bai Weituo said, there's one every year. It's become a habit of our school. Right, don't change the subject. Which one of them is your girlfriend? Neither. Lin Yi shook his head. Neither? Bai Weituo paused, and Song Xiaodao and Zhao Shengji looked at him in disbelief. How is that possible? I'm not lying. Lin Yi smiled bitterly. A relative of mine asked me to take care of them. We're from the same city, so we're quite familiar with each other. I'm basically their follower. Lin Yi added inwardly. She was his follower. Lackey? No way. Bai Weituo's eyes widened. Big brother Lin, you're not lying? Why would I lie to you? Yes means yes. No means no. Do you think I'd go to Wang Xinyan's place instead of hanging out with her if she really was my girlfriend? Lin Yi shrugged with a bitter smile. That's true. If it were me, I definitely wouldn't do that. Bai Weituo nodded. Zhao Shengji and Song Xiaodao believed what Lin Yi was saying, but they were still a little suspicious of Lin Yi's relationship with either Meng Yao, Yu Shu, or Xinyan. What's the plan for today? Lin Yi interrupted everyone's guesses and asked. Today, our department has nothing to do. Xiao Dao and Sheng Ji said that they want to go shopping. They're all foreigners and have never been here before. I was just about to bring them around. Brother Lin, are you going too? Bai Weitu asked. Sure, let's go together then, Lin Yi said. But Huaijuan's call came just as Lin Yi finished his sentence. Jun bro, Lin Yi picked up. Why are you still calling me brother? Ling Shan, Yu Qian, and the others are calling you boss already. I'll go back to calling you boss. You're our captain in the first place, our boss. Huaijun said. Up to you. What's up? Lin Yi knew that as his strength increased, the people around him would return to their original state. Where are you? I have something to discuss with you. It's about House Yu and the drug gang. Huaijun said. Before House Yu fell, it was a bit troublesome to investigate, but it's much easier now. We got some information. All right, where are you? I'll come find you immediately. Armadillo's smiling face appeared in Lin Yi's mind, and then it turned into Ziyu. Lin Yi clenched his fist as he asked faintly. No matter who it was, if they touched someone close to Lin Yi wouldn't let them go unscathed. This was Lin Yi's personality. I'm in Donghai. Right, I didn't tell you yet. I got a promotion. I solved a big case a while back, so I got transferred to Donghai. I'm now the vice director here. My position hasn't changed, but this is the provincial capital, so I'm half a rank higher. Huaijun said, You're still in Songshan? I'll drive back to find you. You're in Donghai. Lin Yi's expression was a bit weird, but he smiled. I'm in Donghai right now, Donghai Industry University. I just came here to report. Huh? No way, you're in Donghai too? That's great. I was a bit depressed about not being able to see you often, but now it's great. Huaijun said. Ah, yeah. You're at the police station? I don't know the way. Lin Yi was new to Donghai, and he was completely clueless. Wait for me at the school gate. I'll pick you up in 15 minutes. Huaijun said. All right, see you later. Lin Yi agreed before turning to Bai Weitu and the others apologetically. I'm sorry. An old friend came looking for me. I'm afraid I can't go shopping with you guys. No way, Lin bro. You have so many things to do here in Donghai. Bai Weitu was a bit disappointed. Is it a guy or a girl? A guy, it's a guy this time. Lin Yi sweated. Let's go together if you don't believe me. Perfect, let's go together. But Lin bro, we're not spying on you. Bai Weitu said quickly. Lin Yi smiled helplessly. Of course we're not spying on him. Weren't you guys just curious? But the three didn't see anyone special at the school gate, and there weren't any beauties either. They lost interest and went to a nearby bus stop after saying goodbye to Lin Yi. Lin Yi stood in front of the school gate, and an Audi stopped in front of Lin Yi. Huaijun got out of the car and waved at Lin Yi. Boss. Jun. Junzi. Lin Yi wanted to call him Jun bro, but remembered that Lin Yi called him boss, so he decided to call him Huaijuan's nickname instead. Haha, it's still as sweet as ever. People would think I don't know the rules if they heard you call me Jun bro. Huaijuan said with a sigh of relief. Let's not talk about that. Any news on Armadillo? Lin Yi opened the car door and sat in the passenger seat. Not bad, Audi A6, but a little old. Chapter 1898. You know, I don't care about that. Huaijuan shook his head. I don't have any news about Armadillo. I'm talking about the drug trafficking. Oh, what is it? Lin Yi was a little disappointed, but it wasn't bad to have news about the drug trafficking. Lin Yi wouldn't mind uprooting them if he had the chance. We found a contact list when we were dealing with House Yu's illegal dealings, but we discovered something shocking. Huaijuan said solemnly. What is it? Lin Yi asked. Red Conches, the person in charge of the drug trafficking. And Jianda, Huaijuan said. And Jianda? Lin Yi's eyes narrowed. And Jianda from House? Jiang Wen's brother? That's right. It's in Jinda. Huaiju nodded. From this contact list, we can see that the people in charge of Red Conches are more or less connected to the Firewolves. There's no direct evidence that the Firewolves and Red Conches are the same organization, but at the very least, they're working together in Jinda. Lenny frowned. I shouldn't have killed him. You've killed Njinda? Huaijun paused. He'd come to Lin Yi this time to see if he could get some evidence from Njinda. It wasn't realistic to use a contact list against House, Un, or the Firewolves. Huaijun couldn't use normal methods to investigate Njinda and House, so he could only place his hopes on Lin Yi. He didn't think that Njinda was already dead. Book Ocean Pavilion, net. Lin Yi paused. He knew that the news about House hadn't spread, probably because they were trying to keep a low profile. He told Huaijun about how House plotted against Pengzhan and caused the car accident. Dead. Forget it then. Huaijun sighed. I thought I could get some clues from him. Does the rest of the family know about this? Linny asked. I'm not sure about that, but I'm afraid they wouldn't know the details even if they knew. I'm just trying it out. After all, the Red Conches and the Firewolves are part of the investigation department. Huaijun said, knowing this is enough. With this direction of investigation, I can also pay attention to it at all times. Lin Yi said, but the Firewolf gang has many experts. Their position seems to be higher than the hidden aristocratic families, so powerful. Huaijun cried out involuntarily. He hadn't had much contact with the Firewolves, and this was a very mysterious gang. Their business and activities weren't as grand as the regular gangs. Huaijun didn't have much contact with them, and he didn't know the power behind them. They really are powerful. I wasn't sure before, but it seems like they're powerful enough to send out an Earth-class late-phase peak, just like that. He shook his head and sighed. Faubert had said that the Firewolves were powerful, but he was still shocked when he saw their strength. If that's the case, then I don't recommend you to take the risk right now. After all, the enemy is too strong. Huaijun paused. Boss, I know you're strong, taking out 3 Earth-class with 1 move. But if the Firewolves are as strong as you say, then they might have a Sky-class. Yeah, that's also why I didn't do anything to Jiang Wen. Lenny nodded. He was protective and tyrannical, but he wasn't an idiot who'd risk his life for no reason. He'd only risk his life when he had no other choice, and he'd let them go if it wasn't necessary. It wouldn't be too late to deal with them later. Right? I've already made a report suggesting Ling Shan to be transferred over. She'll also be the captain of the criminal investigation team, but she'll get a promotion as well. After all, she solved many big cases in Songshan, and the previous captain of the criminal investigation team in Donghai was also transferred to another city because of the case I was involved in. Now that position is empty, and as the vice director of the criminal investigation team, I have a lot of say in the selection, Huaijun said. Ling Shan, he smiled bitterly. He didn't think that Song Ling Shan would follow him right after he left. This is probably her own idea, right? Haha, I knew I wouldn't be able to hide it from you. But girls chasing guys isn't that rare nowadays. If you think she's good, boss, you might as well give her a chance. Huaijun suggested. I don't think so. She's asking me to help her solve cases all the time. If we really have some sort of relationship, wouldn't I be her assistant all the time? He shook his head. Then let's leave it to fate. Huaijun didn't say much. If that's the case, I'll be going first. Call me if you need anything. We'll have a good gathering after I'm done with this. Wait, since you're here, let's get down to business first. I told you last time that I could help you get to Mystic Early Phase, but your Meridians had just recovered, and I was worried that your Meridians wouldn't be able to handle it. But now it's fine. I can directly get you to Mystic Late Phase Peak. He was an Earth class now, and naturally, he could increase Huaijun's strength directly. He didn't need to compress his chi to help him get from Golden Late Phase Peak to Mystic Early Phase. Compared to Ling Shan and Qintian, Huaijun had 1 less pain to deal with. Now, Huaijun took a deep breath. To be honest, he was quite envious of Ling Shan, Yu Qian, and Shantan making a scene in the Noble House meeting as Mystic Late Phase Peak. They were already Mystic Late Phase Peak. This was a height that many practitioners couldn't reach in their entire lifetimes, and yet they were able to reach it so easily. Huaijun wouldn't believe it if they said that they trained themselves. Thinking back to how fast he helped him heal his meridians and level up last time, he knew that it was all thanks to Lin Yi. But Lin Yi didn't bring it up on his own, and Huaijun couldn't just ask for it. What if Lin Yi needed some time to rest after leveling up these people? Wouldn't it be awkward if he was rejected? But since Lin Yi brought it up, there was no reason for Huaijun not to say no. If you don't have anything else, let's do it now. Lin Yi nodded. Chapter 1899. Okay, I haven't bought a house here yet. I've been staying at the hotel. Let's go back to the hotel together, Huaijun said excitedly. Seeing me, Huaijun was staying at the police station's guest house. He had a suite here, and before he bought a house, he was staying here. The people in the guest house evidently knew Huaijun, and they weren't surprised that he'd brought someone back. They thought that he was meeting with a witness or an informant, and naturally, no one bothered him. Let's start now. We've learned from last time. Lin Yi smiled. Okay. Huaijun nodded heavily and sat in front of Lin Yi, extending his hands and letting Lin Yi lock his meridians. He then started channeling his practitioner's arts. Leveling up was a walk in the park for Huaijun as well. He started channeling the first stage of the art of dragon mastery, converting all the energy in his body into the pure energy Huaijun needed, flowing into his meridians without end. Huaijun's strength also broke through from golden late phase peak to mystic, rising all the way to mystic early phase peak, mystic mid phase, mystic late phase peak. Perhaps because of Lin Yi's increase in strength, Huaijun didn't need to compress his qi when he broke through from golden late phase peak to mystic early phase. There was still a barrier, but Lin Yi helped him break through easily. In other words, Huaijun felt the pain of breaking through a bottleneck, but it wasn't as intense as Yuqian and Lingshan's. Mystic late phase peak, Huaijun had already reached it, but Lin Yi didn't stop. He suddenly had an idea. Would it work if he used the second stage of the art of dragon mastery to compress his qi to help Huaijun break through? One had to know that the purity of the qi produced by the second stage of the art of dragon mastery wasn't something the first stage could compare to. The difference was so huge that even Lin Yi was shocked. If he used the second stage to compress his qi, perhaps he really might be able to break through. Thinking of this, Lin Yi asked in a deep voice, Junzi, I'm going to help you break through from the mystic rank to the earth rank. Are you okay with that? It might be very painful, and you might even fail at the last step, causing your meridians to be crippled. However, I can still repair them. Since it can be repaired, then what were they waiting for? Come on, boss. There's no way we can increase our strength without taking some risks. Huaijun said calmly after hearing Lin Yi's words. Huaijun might have hesitated if his meridians were completely destroyed, but Lin Yi could repair them even if they were destroyed. The worst-case scenario was that he'd just have to suffer a bit of pain, and it'd be a waste of time. If he succeeded, he would become even more powerful. Was there even need to choose? He believed that all cultivators would choose the latter. All right, then bear with it. With that, Lin Yi switched from the first stage of the art of dragon mastery to the second stage. Although he wasn't familiar with the second stage yet, switching between the two stages was still a piece of cake for Lin Yi. Lin Yi started trying to compress his qi with the second stage of the art of dragon mastery. But to his surprise, he realized that it was extremely difficult to compress his qi compared to the first stage. The difference was like heaven and earth. The qi formed by the second stage of the art of dragon mastery seemed to be very pure, and it didn't allow Lin Yi to compress it any further. Soon, a layer of sweat formed on Lin Yi's forehead, and there was no progress in compressing his qi. Huaijun was very puzzled. Lin Yi's qi suddenly stopped, but Lin Yi looked like he was working hard on something. Huaijun didn't feel anything at all, and so he didn't dare ask anything even though he was puzzled. He could only cooperate silently. Lin Yi was panicking. He could use the chi in the second stage when he was searching for the practitioner's arts, but it was a little uncontrollable when it came to compressing it. It was as if he couldn't control it at all. The chi was gathered by Lin Yi, and when he tried to compress it, it either slipped away or dissipated on its own. How strange. Lin Yi didn't believe that he couldn't control the chi in his body. What was the point of practicing the art of dragon mastery then? Gritting his teeth, Lin Yi gave up on compressing a large amount of chi from before, choosing to compress a smaller area instead. This time, it had some effect. The chi was still uncontrollable, but under Lin Yi's forceful compression, it slowly shrunk to a certain size. Lin Yi was overjoyed and didn't dare stay any longer. He immediately sent the compressed chi into Huaijuan's meridians. Huaijuan felt Lin Yi's chi pouring into his body once more. He'd been prepared for it, but the sudden release and expansion of the chi still made him feel like his meridians were about to explode. Huaijuan's roar had turned all of his clothes to ash, but the pure energy ripple that had been generated in that instant was enough to destroy everything around him. A trace of joy flashed across Lin Yi's eyes. When he broke through to Earth class, he was in the same situation as Huaijuan. But soon, the joy in Lin Yi's eyes turned into disappointment. Huaijuan didn't break through to Earth class, and the chi wave on his body had stopped. Lin Yi could tell with one look that his strength was still at Mystic Late Phase peak. Huaijuan had broken through to Earth class with his help, but he didn't succeed. This kind of situation often happened when other practitioners tried to break through on their own. It wasn't that easy to break through a barrier, especially a barrier like this. It was extremely difficult for a practitioner to break through a barrier, especially a barrier like this. Most of them had to try multiple times before they broke through, and people like Lin Yi who broke through on the first try were rare, except for the inheritors. Of course, breaking through with Lin Yi's help was a different story. Phew! Huaijuan let out a long breath, a trace of disappointment in his eyes. He knew his own situation very well. He'd failed at the last moment. He was about to break through to Earth class, but he didn't have enough chi to continue the breakthrough. Huaijuan had experienced situations like this before in his training, so he wasn't too surprised. Huaijuan smiled at the depressed look on Lin Yi's face. Captain Eagle, don't tell me this little setback's enough to make you depressed. It's normal for practitioners to fail to break through. Chapter 1900. Just a little bit more, and I might have succeeded. Lin Yi smiled bitterly, but the amount of chi he'd compressed was the limit of what Lin Yi could handle. Any more, and Lin Yi wouldn't be able to control it. Yeah, that means there's hope. If it doesn't work this time, we'll try again in the future. I'm just a lab rat anyways, and I'll be staying in Donghai from now on. It'll be convenient for us to see each other. Huaijuan smiled. Haha, you're right. Lin Yi nodded, feeling a little better. Huaijuan was right. He might not be able to do it this time, but there would be chances in the future. Lin Yi had thought it through as well. The second stage of the art of dragon mastery wasn't as smooth as the first stage, probably because he just started practicing it. The incantations for each stage weren't as detailed as the divisions of strength, but if you were to divide each stage into 10 stages, Lin Yi was only at the second stage of the second stage. He'd just reached the second stage and could barely use the incantations for the second stage. He was a far cry from being familiar with it. Previously, when he used the first level of the mental cultivation method to compress his true chi, he had already broken through to the first level of perfection. Naturally, he could control the true chi in his body freely, and he could even use his true chi to transmit his voice. However, if he wanted to use the second level of the mental cultivation method to do this, it would be quite impossible. Lin, he was like a beginner when it came to the second stage. He hadn't even grasped the basics yet, so there was no way he could do anything with it. Lin Yi calmed down at the thought, remembering Jiao Lao's words. More haste, less speed. Indeed, the situation this time had proven that he only needed to be more familiar with the second stage of the art of dragon mastery. It should be possible to raise Huaijuan to the Earth class. Things that couldn't be done on the first stage were a lot easier on the second. Of course, Lin he wasn't too surprised. Lin would have just stayed at the first stage until he was old if he couldn't make any progress with each stage. Why would he bother with the second stage if he was already familiar with it? I'll go back and consolidate my strength, and I'll try to break through on my own once I'm done. The next time I break through by myself, with your help, we might be able to break through in one go. Huaijun said, I'm afraid it's impossible to try it myself. Lin, he smiled bitterly. There is actually a drawback to helping you increase your strength. I didn't notice it before, but now I've discovered that you can no longer cultivate on your own. Huaijun paused. Lin Yi's words struck a chord with him. Huaijun had tried to break through to the peak late phase of the golden class on his own after he got back, but nothing happened after a couple of attempts. He thought that he was busy with work. He couldn't calm his heart down, but now it seemed that this wasn't the case. Ling Shan and the others already know about it. I only found out about it later. I'm really sorry. Lin, he explained as he looked at the stunned Huaijun. Eagle, what are you talking about? My strength is all thanks to you. Not only that, you're the one who saved my life. Let's not talk about when we were on missions. How many times has our team been saved because of you? Even the last few times you've done me a favor that can't be measured with words. Huaijun said, Mystic late phase peak. That's the dream of so many practitioners. Huaijun wasn't praising. He was just stating the truth. Even a noble house would have a hard time producing a mystic late phase peak practitioner, let alone a regular practitioner. Of course, they wouldn't be able to compete with the hidden houses or the ancient sections. Huaijun was from a noble house, so his vision was limited to the common world. As long as you don't have any psychological burden. Lenny nodded and looked at the sky outside. It's getting late, I'm going back. The two girls at home are going to check on me. Haha, let's go, I'll send you. Huaijun laughed, but realized that he wasn't wearing anything when he stood up. He felt a little awkward. Wait for me, I'm going to change right away. Huaijun sent Lin Yi to the villa in the Shueshang district and found out where Lin Yi's house was. What surprised Lin was that his Cherokee had been driven back and was parked in the parking lot in the villa's yard. It seemed like the miss must have come back in a fit of anger because she couldn't find him. She had a key to the car as well. Lin Yi quickly took out his phone and turned it on. Lin Yi was worried that he'd be disturbed when he helped Huaijun level up, so he turned his phone off. The miss must have called him a couple of times. Is sis-in-law angry? Huaijun blinked as he looked at Lin Yi, who was smiling bitterly. What's sis-in-law? It's not like you don't know my relationship with them. Lin Yi shrugged. Tang. Huaijun was just about to say that Tang Yin wasn't here, but a voice interrupted him before he could finish his sentence. Yang bro, so you're the one who kidnapped Shield bro. Yushu came running out of the yard before Huaijun could finish. Meng Yao and Yushu had just come back as well. Meng Yao had been calling Lin Yi, but Lin Yi's phone was turned off. She'd waited for more than an hour at school, and his phone was still turned off. Meng Yao was both angry and worried, so she drove back first. Meng Yao wasn't worried that something had happened to Lin Yi. What could possibly happen to him at school? Meng Yao thought that Lin Yi might have gone out with Wang Xinyan, since they'd been together for the past couple of days. The thought of Lin Yi and Wang Xinyan together made Meng Yao's heart feel like it was being squeezed by something. She was just about to call Lin Yi again when she heard the sound of a car parked outside the villa. The two turned around out of curiosity, only to see Lin Yi and Huaijun getting out of the car, and Huaijun making fun of her and Shu. Meng Yao didn't know why, but her face only reddened. She wasn't angry at all. Huaijun's next words, however, sent a chill down Meng Yao's spine. Tang what? Wasn't it Tang Yin? Meng Yao wanted to stop him, but Shu reacted faster than her, running out first. Meng Yao let out a breath of relief. Yeah, he's looking for me. I'm helping him level up, but his phone's turned off. You guys can't reach me? Lin Yi said, not noticing that Huaijun was halfway through his sentence. Target equals _ blank. Chapter 1901. Hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00 80 hashtag x00 0 hashtag x00 80 hashtag x00 80 hashtag x00 0 hashtag x00 80 hashtag x00 0 because it was a meaningless word to Lin E. Tang what? Hashtag x00 a0 hashtag x00 a0 hashtag x00 80 hashtag x00 80 hashtag x00 a0. Yeah, we saw that your phone was turned off, so we drove back first. Mingyao's heart relaxed a little at the sight of Lin, E, and Huaijuan coming back together. Even she didn't know why she felt so relaxed. Hashtag x00 80 hashtag x00 80 hashtag x00 0 hashtag x00 a0. Could it be that she didn't want him to be with Xinyan? But Xiao Xiao had said yesterday that Lin Yi was allowed to find a first wife. What was he supposed to do with Wang Xinyan? Hashtag x00 a0 hashtag x00 80 hashtag x00 a0 hashtag x00 80 hashtag x00 0 hashtag x00 0. All right, I'll head back first then, Huaijuan said with a wave of his hand, getting into the car. Hashtag x00 80 hashtag x00 80 hashtag x00 0 hashtag x00 a0. Okay, see you later. Lenny nodded. Hashtag x00 a0 hashtag x00 80 hashtag x00 0 hashtag x00 0 hashtag x00 80 hashtag x00 0 Mengyao and Yushu sighed in relief as they watched the Audi A6 drive away. Luckily, Yushu reacted quickly, or else they wouldn't know how to explain Tangyan. /hashtag x00 80 hashtag x00 80 hashtag x00 80 hashtag x00 80 hashtag x00 a0. Most of the people around Lin Yi had confessed, but Huaijuan hadn't returned to Songzhan yet. Mengyao decided that she'd have to give him a call when she got back and tell him not to spill the beans. Hashtag x00 80 hashtag x00 80 hashtag x00 a0 hashtag x00 80 hashtag x00 80 Lin E. Let's eat together. Granny's son is ready, Mengyao said, but her expression was much warmer. Hashtag x00 80 hashtag x00 a0 hashtag x00 80 hashtag x00 80 hashtag x00 a0. You drove the car back first. Are you angry? Lin Yi looked at Mengyao and Yushu, but didn't see anything wrong with their faces. It was as if they weren't angry at all. Hashtag x00 a0 hashtag x00 80 hashtag x00 0 hashtag x00 0 hashtag x00 a0. No, we're a little tired, so we drove back first. You're in good health anyway, so it doesn't matter if you don't have a car. Mengyao made up a random excuse. You better tell us when you're out next time. We don't want to wait for you at school. Hashtag x00 a0 hashtag x00 80 hashtag x00 80 hashtag x00 80 hashtag x00 a0 hashtag x00 a0. I did lose track of time today. Lenny nodded as he looked at Mengyao. Was this concern for him? However, the eldest miss always had this kind of expression, so he couldn't tell what she was really thinking. Hashtag x00 80 hashtag x00 80 hashtag x00 80 hashtag x00 0 hashtag x00 0. Mengyao didn't say anything else as they entered the villa. Grandma's son knew that they were back, so she started putting the dishes on the table. Hashtag x00 a0 hashtag x00 80 hashtag x00 80 hashtag x00 0 hashtag x00 0. Grandma's son originally said that she would eat after Lin Yi and Mengyao finished eating, but after Lin Yi and Mengyao asked a few times, she ate with them. After all, there were only 4 people in the house, and the table wasn't crowded. There was no need to separate. Hashtag X0080 hashtag X0080 hashtag X0080 hashtag X00A0 plus. In those tough years, Meng Yao and Yushu had always eaten with Grandma's son, and they were used to it. Now that Grandma's son suddenly became a housekeeper and had to separate, they weren't used to it. Hashtag X00A0 hashtag X0080 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 Grandma's son. Have you ever thought about finding another partner? Lin he suddenly remembered Falbert's call and asked casually. Hashtag X0080 hashtag X0080 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X0080 hashtag X00A0. Grandma's son paused and looked at Lin in confusion. Mr. Lin, are you saying that you want me to get married again? Hashtag X0080 hashtag X0080 hashtag X0080 hashtag X0080 hashtag X0080 hashtag X0080. You're already so old, and you have no one to rely on in the future. You should find another partner, Linny said. Hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 this. Mr. Lin, you want me to leave? Grandma's son didn't quite understand Lin Yi's meaning and thought that Lin Yi wanted her to leave. Hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 Lin Yi. What do you mean by this? Meng Yao was also a bit confused by Lin Yi's sudden question. She glared at Lin Yi and told him not to talk nonsense. She would be the first to disagree if he wanted to chase Grandma's son away. If Grandma's son hadn't taken them in during those difficult years, she, Shu, and even Lin Yi would have been found by Yu Lu and died without a burial place. Hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 Grandma, son, you misunderstood. I mean, it just so happens that I know a person who is also single. He's about the same age as you. I also talked to him about this a while ago. I want you to meet him. If you like, you can live together. It can be considered a companion. Linny said, hashtag X00A0 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 hashtag X00A 0 hashtag X00A0 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 hashtag X00 0A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00 Grandma's son was talking about Lin Yi being a practitioner and being hunted down by House Yu. These things naturally couldn't be told to normal people, so Grandma's son rejected Lin Yi directly. Hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0. This person isn't an outsider. Speaking of which, he's our housekeeper in Song's Han. Lin E smiled. We're all family. Hashtag X0080 hashtag X0080 hashtag X0080 hashtag X0080 hashtag X0080 hashtag X0080 Linny, you're talking about Faubert. Meng Yao finally understood what Linny meant. Her eyes lit up as she looked at Grandma's son and thought about Faubert. Indeed, Faubert had always been single, but he really was a couple with Grandma's son. Hashtag X0080 hashtag X0080 hashtag X0080 hashtag X0080 hashtag X0080 hashtag X0080 Grandma's son. You and Faubert are both single. You could be a couple. Yushu happily agreed. Hashtag X0080 hashtag X0080 hashtag X0080 hashtag X0080 hashtag X0080 That's. Grandma's son wasn't as conflicted as before when she heard that Lin E was a housekeeper in Songshan and was also single. However, she hadn't thought about these things for a long time. Now that she was suddenly asked to find a man, she wasn't used to it. Mr. Lin, I know that you mean well, but I don't remember if I have a husband or a child, and I don't remember how they are. Plus, I haven't thought about these things. Hashtag X0080 hashtag X0080 hashtag X0080 hashtag X0080 hashtag X0080. Huh. Then let's meet first. Let's leave everything to fate and get to know each other. Lin E smiled. Hashtag X0080 hashtag X0080 hashtag X0080 hashtag X0080 hashtag X0080. I'll listen to Mr. Lin. Grandma's son said, but didn't expect too much. She'd gotten used to being alone after all these years, and she didn't want to waste Lin Yi's good intentions. Hashtag X0080 hashtag X0080 hashtag X0080 hashtag X0080 on the morning of the 11th. Lin E drove Meng Yao and Yushu to the economics building and parked the car back in the parking lot. He saw that it was about time, so he didn't go back to his dorm and went straight to the biology building. Hashtag X0080 hashtag X0080 hashtag X0080 hashtag X0080 as expected. By Wei Tuo, Song Xiaodao, and Zhao Xingji were already sitting in the third row, and Xin Yan was still sitting in the window seat. The seat beside her was still empty. Hashtag X0080 hashtag X0080 hashtag X0080 hashtag X0080 hashtag X0080 hashtag X0080 Lin E. Over here. Bai Weituo chuckled as he pointed at the seat next to Xin Yan. Hashtag X0080 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 hashtag X0080. She didn't know why she was sitting here again, and she didn't know why she'd left a spot for Lin E. As far as she was concerned, Lin E wouldn't be sitting here again, would he? Otherwise, she could have sat on the right and left 2 empty seats on the left. That way, it would be impossible for Lin E to sit over. Hashtag X0080 hashtag X0080 hashtag X0080 hashtag X0080 hashtag X0080 Lin E smiled and sat down beside Xin Yan naturally. Lin E had an inexplicable fondness for Xin Yan, perhaps because she was the first girl he'd met since coming to Songshan. Thank you for using China Mobile's mobile phone to read. Traffic is free, except for listening to books. Passing by. Actually, being a passerby is a great profession. Scene 1. Annihilation 0. The OP didn't get any replies for a long time. The OP would feel like his presence was weak and that he wasn't being followed by anyone at all. When a passerby said passing by, the OP would suddenly feel like he was being followed after all. Of course, his mood would improve, and he'd feel how beautiful the world was, how fresh the air was, how much more food he'd eaten, his back no longer hurt, and how nimble his limbs were. Ahem, I digressed. Scene 2. Desolation. When no one has posted or replied to a post for a long time, a passerby passed by, and the post moved. People found something to talk about again, and so the OP came alive again. Flowers needed leaves to support them, and even the biggest movie needed passersby. Passing by was one of the most important phrases to use when replying to a post. Actually, being a passerby is a great profession. Scene 1. Annihilation 0. The OP didn't get any replies for a long time. The OP would feel like his presence was weak and that he wasn't being followed after all. When a passerby said, "passing by," the OP would suddenly feel like he was being followed after all. Of course, his mood would improve, and he'd feel how beautiful the world was, how much more food he'd eaten, his back no longer hurt, and how nimble his limbs were. Ahem, I digressed. Scene 2. Desolation. When no one has posted or replied to a post for a long time, a passerby passed by, and the post moved. People found something to talk about again, and so the OP came alive again. Flowers needed leaves to support them, and even the biggest movie needed passersby. Of course, passing by was one of the most important phrases to use when replying to a post. Target equals underscore blank. Chapter 1902. Their first encounter on the train had left a deep impression. Otherwise, with Lin Yi's personality, he wouldn't have bothered with Xin Yan's business in the business district. Book Ocean Pavilion, net. I'm sorry about the day before yesterday. I made your girlfriend misunderstand. Xin Yan saw Lin Yi sitting beside her, and for some reason, she felt relieved. It was as if she wanted him to sit beside her. But Xin Yan didn't think that she had fallen in love with Lin Yi. Her thoughts were similar to Lin Yi's. The two of them seemed to be fated, and it could only be said that they had a good impression of each other. Xin Yan, of course, didn't forget about her engagement. Since it was an engagement, it didn't matter whether she liked him or not. "Oh, they're not my girlfriends," Lin Yi said. "They're not." Xin Yan paused, feeling a little excited. "Weren't they? That's good." But Xin Yan didn't know why she was so excited. Even if they weren't, Lin Yi still had girlfriends. Perhaps she was happy because Lin Yi treated her as a friend and didn't hide anything from her. "My elders asked me to take care of them." Lin Yi didn't lie to Xin Yan. When he first came to Songsan, it was indeed old Lin who asked him to come. Book Ocean Pavilion, net. So that's how it is. You guys live together? Xin Yan regretted asking the question. She wasn't a gossipy person. Why did she suddenly ask Lin Yi this question? It wasn't polite. "Yeah, I bought a villa nearby, and the three of us live together with a butler." Lin Yi nodded. Xin Yan nodded. If that was the case, then it wasn't cohabitation, it was just sharing a room. The villa was so big, it wasn't much different from living in a dorm at school. Xin Yan shook her head at the thought. Her thoughts were a little messy today. What was she thinking about all these random things for? At that moment, Boss Bai walked into the classroom, and the classroom quieted down. Xin Yan snapped out of her daze and looked at the podium. "That's right, they're all here. I thought there would be people who would ask for leave to avoid military training." Boss Bai said casually, "If you're really sick, I won't force you." However, a few years ago, a student pretended to be sick and directly disqualified me from the final exam. He had to repeat the exam with the next student. When everyone heard Boss Bai's words, they couldn't help but feel a chill. This old man was really ruthless. To recultivate with the next cohort, wouldn't that be equivalent to going to college for 5 years? However, thinking that Boss Bai must be an expert in medicine, it was impossible to pretend to be sick in front of him. Two students in the classroom who were about to take out their medical records and ask for leave immediately stopped. "Next, I'll rearrange the class leaders. Bai Wei Ta'a, you'll be the class leader, and Wang Xinyan, you'll be the vice class leader and study commissary." With that, Boss Bai didn't allow the students to question him at all. He moved on to the next thing. In a while, There will be a bus to take you to the military training, but our Donghai Industry University's military training has always been known for being the strictest. This time, you'll be going to the border guards nearby, so be prepared." Wang Xinyan was a bit stunned. She looked at Lin Yi, not understanding how she had become the vice class leader and study commissary. Bai Weituo, on the other hand, had expected this result, so he didn't feel anything out of place. He only thought to himself, "Only big bro Lin can change my stubborn grandpa's mind, right?" Everyone in the class had heard about the strictness of the military training in Donghai Industry University. The two students who had wanted to pretend to be sick had given up because they heard that the military training was too strict. It was said that this was real military training, and it was a completely different concept from the military training in high school. But after the training, their bodies were indeed strengthened. However, Coiling Tiger Wright looked at the nervous and scared students in the class with a disdainful look on his face. Coiling Tiger Wright was an elixir maker, but he was still a golden class cultivator. His body was much stronger than normal students, and no matter how crazy the military training was, he wouldn't feel any pressure. "Okay, that's all. Let's gather in front of the teaching building of the biology department later. The military training is based on each department. There will be a transport vehicle to take you to the military training site." After saying that, Boss Bai was ready to leave. "No way. We're going somewhere else." When the students in the class heard that they had to leave for the military training, they immediately became a little anxious. They also had other high school classmates who had applied for other universities, and their military training had already ended. However, they were all training in school. It was relatively rare for them to go directly to the army for military training. "Yeah, let's go buy something delicious. We won't be able to buy anything if we go there," another student said anxiously. "Oh, right, a reminder." Boss Bai was just about to leave when he turned around and reminded them, "During the military training, you're not allowed to bring snacks, clothes, or personal belongings. We'll provide you with food and lodging, and you'll have to hand in all your belongings and return them after the training." No way. Boss Bai's words made those students who were about to go shopping feel discouraged. At around 10 o'clock in the morning, rows of military buses stopped in front of the biology faculty's teaching building. The medicine faculty was relatively small, with less than 30 people in total, so they took a separate bus. After everyone had boarded the bus, it started slowly and drove toward the military training site. Military training was based on classes, so every bus was filled with students from class. Some specializations had more students in their classes, so there were even 3 students squeezed into one seat. As for the medical specialization, the entire specialization sat in one bus, and there were still empty seats. Lanny was wondering if he should still sit with Xinyan when he saw Bai Weituo, Song Xiaodao, and Zhao Shengji sitting in the last row, with other students sitting next to them. It was obvious that they didn't want to leave a seat for Lin Yi. Lin Yi couldn't help but smile bitterly as he sat next to Xinyan. "We're sitting together again. What a coincidence." Lin Yi was a little awkward. It was a little too obvious. "Yeah," Xinyan blushed, thinking that it wasn't a coincidence at all. It was clearly intentional. But she didn't say it. Right Coiling Tiger, yellow hair, and purple hair sat in a seat far away from Lin Yi. Right Coiling Tiger hated and feared Lin Yi and wanted to cause trouble for Lin Yi, but he wasn't strong enough. He could only endure it for now. In fact, with the Hidden House used strength, sending out another Earth-class late-phase peak wasn't a hard thing to do, but the problem was, even if they did send this person, would they be able to do anything to Lin Yi? Chapter 1903. If they were killed by Lin Yi in one move, it would be a huge loss. House Yu did have a Sky-class master, but without the approval of the ancient sects, who would dare to let them out? The Heavenly Elixir sect had specifically reminded the Hidden Right family about this matter. Although Sky Elixir sect was growing stronger and had surpassed the other ancient sects, they still didn't have the ability to destroy the other ancient sections. Naturally, they couldn't be too arrogant. Has your family's matter been resolved? On the way, the other students were chatting and laughing. Only Xinyan and Lin Yi were quiet. Lin felt a little awkward and found a random topic. Yes, it's been resolved. Xinyan thought about her background and sighed. Is the engagement with House Kong still there? Lin asked. Yeah. Xinyan nodded. She didn't know why, but she was frustrated. She didn't like this marriage before, but she didn't want to marry Xiaolong as much as she did now. She didn't want to marry Xiaolong anymore. You haven't broken the engagement? He was surprised, but he remembered that Xiao family and House Kong were in a similar situation. Although they both had the support of hidden houses, many masters had died. The possibility of the two joining forces was very high. No, it's more or less settled. I'm in university, and I'm in Donghai. I'm afraid Xiaolong will come looking for me soon. Xinyan smiled bitterly. You don't want to marry him? Lin asked. So what if I don't want to? I'm just a sacrifice for my family's interests. Xinyan shook her head. She was disappointed and even a little dull. You don't have to marry him if you don't want to. He sympathized with Xinyan. If Xinyan married a good man, he would bless her. But if she married House Kong, according to Lin Yi's calculations, House Kong would be destroyed by him sooner or later. Wouldn't she become a widow if she married them? I don't want to marry. Do I have to marry you? Xinyan smiled bitterly, but for some reason, she made a joke. Wang Xinyan's face burned as soon as she heard that. She wasn't a person who liked to joke, but it made her a little embarrassed to say it out loud. Sure. He smiled. I'm just joking with you. Xinyan's face turned even redder at Lin Yi's reply, but she was a little pleasantly surprised. It wasn't as if he didn't look down on her at all. Lin Yi's cold demeanor earlier. Wang Xinyan still thought that she wasn't attracted to her at all. There were some men who would act cold to attract attention when they were pursuing a girl, but Wang Xinyan knew that he wasn't that type of person. Lin Yi's coldness was really indifferent. It was as if he had seen through everything. He didn't take it to heart. I'm just joking. I can't kill Xiaolong, can I? Lin laughed. You don't seem to be afraid of House Kong. Yes. Aren't you afraid? Xinyan suddenly remembered that the man in front of her wasn't a normal person, either. He'd kicked House Xiao and House Kong out of the noble house ranks, and Uncle Pai, Pai Yang, and the others had either died at his hands or his lackey's hands. But he was still alive and well. Even though the Kong and Xiao families had strong support, they had no choice but to maintain the prosperity of their families through marriage. You don't really want me to kill Xiaolong, do you? Lin asked in a low voice. Xinyan paused. She shook her head, even though she did think about it for a moment. She really wanted to ask Lin to kill Xiaolong, but that idea was too crazy. It'd be fine if Lin killed the guards, but if he really killed Xiaolong, wouldn't there be a lot of trouble? With that thought, Xinyan gave up on the idea. Kill him, and marry Kong Ming? That bastard is even worse. Then kill them all, Lin said. Xinyan didn't know what to say. He looked like a gentleman. Was he a violent maniac? Kill them all just like that? Meng Yao and Yushu sat in the other car. It was an economics car. Yao, it's tough without Shield Bro's help, right? Yushu missed Lin a little. She probably wouldn't be able to see him during this time. We can do it without him, Meng Yao said. Shoo, we need to learn not to rely on him too much. He'll leave one day. How can he stay in our villa forever? We're living in his villa now, Yushu said. Shield Bro won't chase us away if we don't leave. We're already in university. We'll grow up eventually. We'll have our own families and careers. Are we still going to rely on Lin then? Meng Yao sighed as she looked at the trees passing by outside the window, a little sad. She felt that she had matured quite a bit in this half a year and was no longer that stubborn miss who didn't know anything anymore. Lin had taught her the value of friendship, family, and love, especially during those difficult times. It was a precious memory. Yao, why don't you be Shield Bro's first wife? That way, you can be with him forever, Yushu suggested. Aren't you a second wife? You can be with him, right? Meng Yao smiled. Yushu's eyes flashed with worry. Okay, I'll try my best. Meng Yao looked at Shu strangely. She felt like something was wrong with Shu today. Wasn't she always full of confidence? Why did she say she'll try her best? It's nothing. The weather's pretty good today, Shu said. Meng Yao looked at Shu, confused. She didn't know what she was talking about. After the cars left the school, they drove onto the national highway. The more they drove, the more secluded they got. Eventually, they got onto a dirt road. The car's shock absorbers were pretty good, but the bumpy ride was too much for the spoiled students. They started whining, regretting that they didn't bring a cushion. Meng Yao and Yushu, on the other hand, were perfectly composed. They wouldn't have been able to take this pain half a year ago, but they'd gone to the snowy valley once, and they'd been through all sorts of hardships. This was nothing compared to it. The two looked at each other and smiled. This was a rare life experience. Xinyan wasn't a spoiled child, but she'd never suffered like this before. She was still a little carsick. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to listen to her MP3 player on the train and plane. Music could reduce the dizziness. To be continued. Chapter 1904. Blurg. Xinyan felt a little nauseated. She didn't bring her MP3 player, and since they weren't allowed to bring their personal belongings during the training, she naturally wouldn't break the school's rules. What's wrong? Linny turned around to see that Xinyan's face was a little pale, and there was a thin layer of sweat on her forehead. She looked like she was in pain. I'm a little nauseous, motion sick. I want to vomit. But as soon as the words left his mouth, a puddle of white liquid came out of his mouth and landed on Lin Yi's pants. Lin Yi didn't move away, nor did he look down on Xinyan. He reached out to press on her acupuncture points, but hesitated halfway. Xinyan still wanted to vomit, so Lin Yi didn't hesitate any longer. He put his hand under Xinyan's shirt and pressed on the acupoint on her stomach, sending a pure stream of pure qi over to calm the urge to vomit. Xinyan's carsick was obviously caused by her stomach being shaken, and that was why she felt like vomiting. Lin Yi only needed to straighten out her stomach and liver, and she'd be fine. However, Bai Tuo felt that the carriage was a little too monotonous, and he wanted to sing a song with his classmates to ease the monotony of the journey. But when he walked past Lin Yi, he saw Xinyan's head buried in Lin Yi's chest and Lin Yi's hand under her clothes. Bai Tuo was shocked. Xinyan's vomiting wasn't loud, and no one in the carriage noticed, but Bai Tuo stood in the middle of the carriage and made another sound, drawing the attention of the other students. They all turned to look, and the ones who were closer saw Lin Yi and Xinyan's states clearly. They were all stunned. Isn't that it? My goddess. She's taken just like that. A guy sighed, looking up at the sky. Hearing his sigh, the other people's gazes became even more ambiguous. Lin Yi smiled bitterly. This Bai Tuo, of all the times he could have come, he just had to come when he was treating Xinyan's vomiting. There was no way he could explain this. However, Lin Yi was not a person who liked to explain things to others. In the dormitory, sometimes he would explain to Bai Tuo and the others. That was because they were his roommates. Lin Yi treated them as his friends. That was why he would explain to them. But other than that, he counted on Lin Yi to explain to others. That was simply an unrealistic thing. Bai Tuo saw Lin Yi's dumbfounded expression. Knowing that he was in trouble, he quickly walked to the front of the car and said to his classmates, "We're only halfway through the journey. Let's sing a song. It's our first group activity. What do you think?" This time, everyone's attention was diverted by Bai Tuo. Of course, although everyone was a little curious about Lin Yi's boldness, this kind of thing was also common on campus. Everyone had also familiarized themselves with the campus in the past 2 days. They also had a better understanding of the young couples who met in the woods and the swimming pool. This kind of thing was nothing between couples. So what if they touched each other? There were real fights in the swimming pool. Bai Tuo took the lead and sang a song by Su Shihan. A song by Su Shihan. The young people were all familiar with it, and they all liked her. Bai Tuo started singing, and the others started singing. Of course, except for Right Coiling Tiger and the others. Right Coiling Tiger was a little depressed when he heard Su Shihan's song. It wasn't that he didn't have the idea of hitting on Su Shihan. In fact, he went to ask Su Shihan out, and he even wanted to ask her to play with him through her manager, but he was rejected. Right Coiling Tiger was very depressed because of this. He wanted to forcefully kidnap Su Shihan, but he didn't think that Su Shirhan's bodyguard was a master. Although Right Coiling Tiger didn't give up, he didn't have the chance to get close to Su Shirhan. He could only give up for now. Of course, Lin Yi didn't sing, because he didn't know how to sing at all. Su Shirhan came to his house to sing a few times, but Lin Yi didn't participate. Under Lin Yi's chi, Wang Xinyan's face looked a lot better. She let out a sigh of relief and raised her head from Lin Yi's arms. But when she remembered that Lin Yi's hand was still on her stomach, her face turned red again. "I'm sorry. It was a misunderstanding." Lin Yi smiled bitterly. He didn't want to explain to others, but he had to explain to Wang Xinyan. No matter what, Wang Xinyan was his good friend, and it wouldn't look good for a girl like her to have a misunderstanding. "Thank you." Wang Xinyan was a little shy, but she wasn't angry at Lin Yi at all. Lin Yi was a very good doctor, and Wang Xinyan knew that from the beginning. Back on the business street, when Lin Yi saved Lu Jinhu, Wang Xinyan knew that. And so, Xinyan knew that Lin Yi didn't have any other intentions. He was just trying to help her. It was embarrassing that he'd touched her stomach, but he'd done it out of good intentions. Why would she blame him? Lin Yi let go of his hand and pinched Wang Xinyan's forehead a couple of times, and Wang Xinyan felt refreshed. She didn't feel nauseous anymore, and the dizziness from before was gone as well. She felt a lot better in an instant. It was amazing. This man really was good. Wang Xinyan looked at Lin Yi, a complicated look in her eyes. Lin Yi wasn't just good at martial arts, either. He'd been able to get the scammer's money back on the train, and then switch Zhang Duopan and Fan Gan as wine. This wasn't something a normal person could do. Lin Yi's skills were on par with a magician's or a thief's. But this wasn't even Lin Yi's specialty. Lin Yi's medical skills were something that Wang Xinyan couldn't help but gasp in amazement. To be able to make her sober from motion sickness in such a short amount of time, that was no ordinary feat. It was just a small ailment, but it was hard to cure it completely. She'd have to vomit for a long time every time she got carsick, and she'd have to drink a couple bottles of Huaxiang Zhengqi water to recover. But all Lin Yi did was rub his abdomen and forehead. What amazing medical skills! If that wasn't enough, then Lin Yi's martial arts skills were even more amazing. Uncle Pai, Pai Yang Yang, and the others were from hidden houses. They'd only be sending themselves to their deaths in front of Lin Yi and his lackeys. Just what kind of person was he? He was just a normal student in a university. She wouldn't have noticed the difference between Lin Yi and the other students if she didn't know about all this. She felt Lin Yi's hand move away from her forehead as she was lost in her thoughts. She felt a sudden reluctance to part with Lin Yi's hand. She didn't know if it was because she didn't want to let go of that refreshing feeling or because she didn't want to let go of Lin Yi's hand. To be continued. Chapter 1905. What's there to thank me for? We're the ones who got misunderstood. Lin Yi smiled bitterly. So what if it's a misunderstanding? Xinyan shook her head as she noticed the white stain on Lin Yi's pants, along with the mucus from her own stomach. It was a disgusting mess. Xinyan hadn't eaten breakfast this morning, only drinking a bag of milk. She vomited half of it on Lin Yi's pants, feeling guilty. "I'm sorry, your pants. Oh, it's nothing." Lin Yi didn't feel disgusted at all. It wasn't a big deal at all. Back when he was on a mission with Huaijuan, Lin Yi didn't feel disgusted at all, not to mention the mucus from poisonous flowers and plants. He'd seen it all before, let alone vomit. I'll help you wash it," Xinyan said, a little embarrassed. "I heard they're giving us camouflage uniforms when we get there. I'll change out of them when we get back." Lin Yi said casually. Yeah. Xinyan didn't say anything else, but what happened just now had brought the two of them closer. The two had known each other for a long time, but the intimate contact this time, despite the fact that it was a therapy session, made them feel a lot closer. Bai Weitua led the group to sing a couple of songs before walking to the back of the car. The group was tired after a couple of songs and needed a break, but Bai Weitua couldn't help but turn around when he passed by Lin Yi's seat. What he saw shocked him even more. It was on Lin Yi's pants. There was a puddle of milky white, dried mucus. Bai Weitua had seen them do a couple of times before. His thoughts weren't too pure, either. So he thought of a possibility. Wasn't Wang Xinyan looking down just now? Could it be that she was helping Lin Yi, and then she choked and vomited on Lin Yi's pants? He thought he heard Xinyan retching just now. It had to be because of this. But this time, Bai Weidahua didn't dare to make a ruckus. He just gave Lin Yi a thumbs up and said in a low voice, "Congratulations, Brother Lin. You got sister-in-law to help you so quickly. Hee hee, in a place with so many people. Awesome." Question mark. Lin Yi was stunned, not knowing what Bai Weidahua was talking about. Xinyan didn't know what was going on either. However, she could still understand the word sister-in-law. She immediately blushed and lowered her head, not daring to look at Lin Yi and Bai Weidahua. Haha, I'll go back first. I won't bother you anymore. When Bai Weidahua saw Lin Yi's stunned look, he thought he had seen through him, so he quickly walked back. He told Song Xiaodao and Zhao Shengji about what he saw and heard in a low voice. Just now, what did he say? Xinyan asked after Bai Weidahua left. Although she knew that what Bai Weidahua said was definitely not something good, she still asked out of curiosity. Besides, she and Lin Yi had nothing to do with each other, and they were good friends. She wasn't afraid of anything. Just now, he said you helped me. Help me with what? Lin Yi was confused as well. But when he looked down, he saw the white mucus on his pants. He suddenly understood, and he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Wang Xinyan wasn't an innocent girl who didn't know anything. She had health classes in high school, and she heard about some things from her classmates. At this moment, she followed Lin Yi's gaze to Lin Yi's pants, and she finally understood what Bai Weidahua meant. She was lying on Lin Yi's body just now, and he thought that she was helping Lin. Thinking of this, Wang Xinyan blushed even redder. Why was this Bai Weidahua's thinking so complicated? But there was no way to explain this. The more she explained, the worse it would get. Seeing Wang Xinyan's expression, Lin Yi knew that this girl understood what Bai Weidahua meant. He shook his head helplessly. I'll explain to him later. Forget it, it's not a big deal. I don't need anyone to do anything to me. Wang Xinyan shook her head and stopped Lin Yi from explaining. Then, it's not good for your reputation, Lin Yi said. Chapter 1906. I think he's from a border defense, but I didn't know he was from here. Yushu had never been to her brother's army before, so she was surprised. At this moment, Chen Yutian started speaking. Hello, freshman. I'm the person in charge here, Chen Yutian. I'm also the head instructor of this military training. Donghai Industry University's military training has always been the strictest. Here, I will train you according to the requirements of our army. This is a test of your willpower and also a strengthening of your body. In the days to come, I will arrange for you to train new recruits. Those who are the same age as you, or even those who are a year younger than you, can do it. I don't want any of you to fall behind. Although the students knew that the military training would be strict, they couldn't help but complain when they heard that Chun Yutian was training them according to the requirements of new recruits. But thinking about it, it wasn't too bad. If it was according to the requirements of veterans, it would be even more difficult for them. This time, I will also complete your training with other instructors. I will be the instructor of one of your classes. Chen Yutian said, all instructors get into position. Bring your class to collect camouflage uniforms and daily necessities. Arrange the dormitories. After dinner, meet here at 6 o'clock. Yes. A row of instructors, standing not far away from the stage, responded in unison. What surprised Lin even more was that Chen Yutian became the medical instructor. When Chen Yutian saw that Lin Yi was in the group, he was shocked and embarrassed. Once upon a time, Lin Yi was his instructor, and even now, Lin Yi was still his boss, someone he respected in his heart. He didn't have the ability to be Lin Yi's instructor. He knew Lin Yi's ability very well. It was a coincidence that he'd become a medical instructor. He'd heard that it was the best major in the school, and so he'd chosen it. He hadn't expected Lin Yi to be here as well. Lin Yi didn't care about going to university. He only wanted to accompany Meng Yao and Yushu, so Lin Yi didn't tell Chen Yutian where he went to school and which major he signed up for. Meng Yao and Yushu, on the other hand, didn't have the chance to talk to Chen Yutian too much because they had to escape with Lin Yi. The only time they met was in the hospital, and after that, Chen Yuqian went back to the army. They didn't have the chance to talk about these things. Lin Yi smiled at Chen Yuqian and made a shushing gesture. Chen Yuqian naturally understood that Lin Yi didn't want to expose his identity. This put Chen Yuqian at ease. Lin Yi wasn't someone who was easy to talk to, but he was very easy to talk to his friends. Chen Yuqian brought the 20 or so medical students to a row of houses. This is your dorm. Boys and girls share the same bed. You must take off your clothes when you sleep at night, and you must wake up when you hear the number in the middle of the night. Now, guys and girls, come and get your camouflage uniforms and necessities. What Chen Yuqian said was what he always said to the students during military training. Although he rose in rank due to his contributions, he started from the lowest rank as an officer. He had been an instructor for these students for many years, so he said these words casually. But after he said it, he felt that something was wrong. There was only one girl in the medical faculty. In the past, there wasn't a single girl in the medical faculty. Although there were more boys than girls in the classes Chen Yuqian taught before, there was never a situation where there was only one girl. It should be known that when the university divided students into classes according to their major, they would also distribute the number of boys and girls in a balanced way. Although there were very few girls in majors like computer science and office automation, there would still be 8 to 10 girls in a class of 30. Even if it was a little less, there would definitely be more than one girl. When there were a lot of girls, it wasn't a big deal to sleep with guys at night. After all, they were all wearing clothes, and the girls would always be in a group far away from the guys. But this was the first time Chen Yuqian encountered a situation where there was only one girl. He was in a difficult position. How was he supposed to live here? Was he supposed to let a girl sleep with a bunch of guys at night? It was fine even if there was one more guy to keep her company. This way, a girl couldn't go to the bathroom or take a shower without someone to keep her company. It was inconvenient. Chen Yuqian glanced at the name list in his hand and said, Wang Xinyan, you're the only girl in the class, and it might be inconvenient for you to rest at night. Do you want me to transfer you to another class? Wang Xinyan froze. To be honest, it was inconvenient for her to be the only girl in the class, but at least there were a few familiar classmates and her best friend, Lin Yi. If she was transferred to a class full of strangers, she would feel even more uncomfortable. Seeing Wang Xinyan in a daze, Bai Weituo stood up and said, Reporting to the instructor, I'm a class monitor, Bai Weituo. Wang Xinyan is Lin Yi's girlfriend. There's no inconvenience. He was the class monitor, and naturally, he had to stand up at this time. Besides, Lin Yi was his big brother, and Wang Xinyan was his best friend. The vice monitor was Wang Xinyan, and it was inappropriate for Wang Xinyan to report herself. It was better for him, the class monitor, to take the lead. Bai Weituo had gotten the military training rules before, and he knew how to report to the instructor, so he did it meticulously. Chen Yuqian looked at Lin Yi in surprise. As expected, Wang Xinyan was standing together with Lin Yi. He was puzzled. Since when did Wang Xinyan become Lin Yi's girlfriend? However, he saw Wang Xinyan's blushing face, and Lin Yi didn't say anything. So he nodded. All right, Bai Weituo, return to the team. Since that's the case, get the camouflage uniforms and supplies. We'll eat at the canteen at 5 and be back here at 6. Yes, Bai Weituo replied and returned to the team. At this time, some soldiers used a pickup truck to pull a truck full of supplies. Chen Yuqian waved at Bai Weituo, asking him to help distribute the supplies. After collecting the supplies, the students went to the terrace house to rest. The terrace house was actually a large shared bed. The conditions weren't very good, but it was arranged this way to train everyone's will of hardships. Chapter 1907. Xinyan snapped back to her senses after taking the supplies. She'd been mistaken as Lin Yi's girlfriend again, but it wasn't the first time. Big bro Lin, why don't you take Xinyan to a place to change? We guys are too lazy to go to the washroom to change, so we'll just close the door and change in the house. Bai Weituo said as he saw Lin Yi walk in with Xinyan. All right. Lin, He shook his head helplessly. She wanted him to take Xinyan to get changed? Where would they go to change? There's a public washroom not too far from here. I think they go there to change. Xinyan saw the frown on Lin Yi's face and understood what Lin Yi was thinking. Public washroom? Lin Yi paused and turned his head. There was indeed a public restroom not too far from his camp, 2 camps away from him. There was a long line for the girls, though. There were fewer people on the boys' side, but there was a long line for the girls. Lin Yi understood immediately. Most guys didn't care, and even if they didn't go to the washroom, they'd just find a place to change their clothes. Girls, on the other hand, wouldn't change in front of so many people. But how long would it take for Xinyan to wait in line? Xinyan, on the other hand, could see that it was troublesome as well. Girls took longer to change than guys, too, so the line would probably take a few hours. Maybe you can hide behind the house, and I'll keep a lookout. Lin Yi looked at the back of the townhouse. There was a fence, but there was nothing behind it other than a cement ditch. It was very clean, with not even a speck of mud in it. Xinyan hesitated, feeling a little embarrassed at first, but then she remembered that Lin Yi had touched her stomach. What was there to be embarrassed about? There were a lot of people in the washroom, too. Xinyan nodded. Then I'll have to trouble you. Xinyan jumped into the ditch carefully, not because she was afraid of Lin Yi peeking. She didn't know why, but she had this strange trust in Lin Yi. She jumped into the ditch because she didn't want anyone to see her. She quickly took off her clothes in the gutter and looked at the bra she was wearing. She hesitated for a moment. She'd have to train later, and she'd have to sleep with her clothes on at night. It'd be very uncomfortable to wear the bra, and it'd be troublesome to take it off again. Might as well take it off now. With that in mind, Xinyan unbuttoned her bra and took it off, placing it on top of the top she'd just taken off. She was just about to put her tank top back on when an irritating autumn wind blew at her, sending her bra flying into the air. Xinyan's bra didn't have any silicone in it, and it didn't have any massage functions. It was just a normal, light type. The camp was very empty, too. Ah! Xinyan yelped as she looked at her bra being blown away. She reached out to grab it. Lin Yi had his back turned, waiting for Xinyan to change her clothes. It wasn't that he didn't like Xinyan, and he wanted to peek, but Lin Yi didn't think it was right. He was a man of principles, and so he didn't turn around. But Xinyan's scream gave Lin Yi a fright. Xinyan wouldn't be in trouble, would she? Or would some gangster come over? Lin Yi quickly turned around and looked in Xinyan's direction. In actuality, Lin Yi had turned his head around so easily because Xinyan was standing in the gutter. There were tall stone steps blocking his view, and as long as he crouched down, Lin Yi wouldn't be able to see her at all. But then, Xinyan got up to grab her bra. Her arms spread wide, and the white of her chest entered Lin Yi's line of sight. Ugh! Lin Yi gulped. There was only one thought in his mind when he saw Xinyan's chest. So big, so white, he didn't think that Xinyan's chest wouldn't look that big when she wore it, but when she took it off, it was full of assets. It wasn't as big as shoes, but it was at least a few levels bigger than Miss. In fact, this was also the result of Xinyan wearing a thin bra. Xinyan didn't purposely squeeze her chest, and she usually wore casual clothes. Of course, it wouldn't be seen. Seeing Lin Yi turn around, Xinyan was stunned. Her hands were raised in the air, and she forgot to pull them back. She didn't know what to do. But the next moment, Xinyan understood what Lin Yi was looking at. Her face reddened as she covered her chest and crouched down, not daring to come out of the gutter. She didn't dare to come out. Xinyan's face reddened as she realized what Lin Yi was looking at. Lin Yi finally understood why Xinyan was screaming and what she was trying to do with her wings spread. Her bra had been blown away by the autumn wind, and not only had it flown away, it had flown all the way to the rooftop of the house. Lin Yi was speechless. He wanted to wait for Xinyan to change her clothes and pick it up himself. After all, it wasn't a good idea for him to pick it up, but now he really had to do it himself. Xinyan couldn't do it at all. Shaking his head, Lin Yi flew to the roof. The row house was tall, but it wasn't much in Lin Yi's eyes. It only took a few leaps for him to reach the roof. Xinyan's bra was hanging on a piece of debris on the roof. Lin Yi picked up the bra, and a gust of wind blew against his face again. This time, It brought with it a real fragrance, like the body fragrance of a young girl. It was very pleasant. Lin Yi paused, and then realized that it was the fragrance of Xin Yan's bra. The scent sent a shiver down Lin Yi's spine. It felt cool and refreshing. Xin Yan wasn't someone who liked to put on makeup, and he could tell that she didn't use perfume or anything like that from how she usually wore no makeup. Could it be the legendary body fragrance? Lin Yi wasn't sure. As he was thinking, he heard someone calling him from below. Big Brother Lin? Bai Wei Tuo finished changing and walked out of the row house. He raised his head and saw Lin Yi standing on a beam, not knowing what he was doing. Bai Wei Tuo. Lin Yi turned around and saw Bai Wei Tuo, but his hand was still holding Xin Yan's bra. He felt a little awkward. Bai Wei Tuo also saw the bra in Xin Yan's hand. His admiration for Lin Yi was like the yellow river flowing from the sky into the sea, never to return. Big Brother Lin, you're amazing, you're amazing. You're doing it with your sis-in-law on the roof. You're so much better than those car shock bro and boobs bro. You're the roof bro. Bai Wei Tuo gave a thumbs up. He had never seen a couple do it on the roof. Chapter 1908. Translator, Nyoibo, Studio Editor, Nyoibo Studio Ugh. You're thinking too much. Lin Yi sweated. I went to the house just to pick up this. Xin Yan's in the gutter. Gutter? That's still pretty fierce. Bai Wei Tuo said. Lin Yi knew that there was no point in trying to explain himself. He didn't say anything else as he jumped out of the house and went to the gutter behind the house. Xin Yan had already put on her clothes, but her face was still a little red, especially when Lin Yi came back with her bra. She lowered her head in embarrassment. Xin Yan told herself that it was just a misunderstanding and that it was nothing. She'd waited for Lin Yi to come back, but now that Lin Yi had come back, she was a little embarrassed. Here, Lin Yi said as he handed the bra to Xin Yan. I don't want it anymore. It's yours. Xin Yan was already embarrassed, and she felt even more embarrassed when Lin Yi handed it back to her. She didn't want it because she was shy, and she didn't want to take it back. That it's yours was just something that came out of her mouth, but she regretted it the moment she said it. She was a girl. How could she give a guy a used bra? Wasn't that a little too intimate? What? Lin Yi didn't know what to say. She gave it to him? What did that mean? Lin Yi rubbed his nose as he looked at the bra in his hands. He didn't know what to do with it. Lin Yi knew that he wasn't some kind of underwear thief, nor was he some kind of perverted underwear collector, but the smell of the bra was really nice. Should he keep it? It's nothing, Xin Yan said, feeling even more embarrassed at the way he was looking at her bra. She snatched it back and stuffed it into her pocket. Ugh, didn't you give it to me? Lin Yi paused, surprised that Xin Yan had snatched the bra away. Xin Yan stomped her foot angrily. She wanted to stuff Lin Yi's mouth with her own. If it weren't for her own bra, she would have shoved it into Lin Yi's mouth. Would you die if you spoke less? I don't want to give it to you again. Xin Yan had no choice but to say it, but things between the two were too intimate. Lin Yi scratched his head, a bitter smile on his face. It's fine if you don't want to send me off. Let's go. Xin Yan picked up the clothes she'd changed out of, ready to leave. Wait. Lin Yi stopped her. What's wrong? Xin Yan turned her head around, wondering if Lin Yi really wanted her bra. If he insisted, should she give it to him or not? I haven't changed yet. They're all done. If I go back and change, wouldn't I be a monkey? Lin Yi pointed at his clothes. Oh! Xin Yan sighed in relief. She felt bad for misunderstanding Lin Yi. She was right. How would he be that kind of pervert? If that were the case, he'd be more than happy to go along with the flow when people mistook her as his girlfriend. He wouldn't even bother explaining himself. Xin Yan felt a little guilty and shy at that thought. Then, I'll keep a lookout for you. Okay. Lin Yi nodded and jumped into the drain. But Lin Yi was a lot faster than Xin Yan. He was done in a blink of an eye. Let's go, I'm done. That fast. Xin Yan was surprised. I'm used to it. Lin Yi smiled. I didn't mean it. I heard you yelling, and when I turned around, I saw stop it. Xin Yan's face reddened again. She glared at Lin Yi angrily, stomping her foot. I forgot all about it. Lin, he looked at Xinyan. He wasn't expecting a quiet girl like her to get so worked up. He shrugged. I forgot to. Forget my ass. Don't talk about it again. Xinyan humphed. Okay. Lin, he didn't dare say anything else, since he was in the wrong. The two came to the front of the bungalow to see Bai Wei-Tuo and his classmates sitting in groups of twos and threes, resting and chatting. Bai Wei-Tuo rushed over when he saw Xinyan's blushing face. Boss, you're really something, he said in admiration. You're really something, boss. Don't talk nonsense. Lin, he glared at him. I know. Only Zhao Shengji, Song Xiao Dao and I know. The others don't know. Bai Wei-Tuo smiled, but the others have probably guessed it too. Indeed, when the others saw Xinyan and Lin coming out from the back of the house, they all had an ambiguous look on their faces. This little bastard Lin, sure is enjoying life. Such a pretty girl, and he just let her be your cauldron. The yellow hair said with a sigh, I'll let Lin be arrogant for a while. When I become a second-rank refiner, I'll be able to sit in the position of an elder in the House of Yu. I won't be able to send the masters of the House of Yu to kill Lin, but I can do it in secret. Coiling Tiger of the Right hated Lin, to the bone. Besides, when I become a second-rank refiner, I'll be able to refine countless pills. I'll be able to make a fortune in the hidden auction. It won't be hard to get the Blood Cloak underworld people to kill him. Yes. The purple hair nodded. Master Yu, you're the one with the foresight. Let this Lin be arrogant for a while. Arrogant? We can't fight him with our strength, but we can use other methods to annoy him and give him some trouble. It'll be fun in school, Coiling Tiger of the Right said. Then, aren't you afraid that Lin will attack us? The yellow hair thought of Lin and felt a chill down his spine. In Boss Bai's class, he wouldn't be giving face to Boss Bai. If he doesn't give face to Boss Bai, that person from the Sky Elixir sect won't let it go, knowing Boss Bai's identity. If Lin dares to touch a hair of mine, it'll be suicide. I'd love for him to touch me. Coiling Tiger of the Right sneered. What Boss Bai hates the most is people from families and sects putting on airs in front of him and bullying him. Hiss. The yellow hair and purple hair knew that Boss Bai wasn't simple. Otherwise, why would the hidden House of the Right send Coiling Tiger of the Right to school? But they didn't expect Boss Bai to be this powerful. Even the Sky Elixir sect respected him. Just who was this old man? Lin naturally didn't know that Coiling Tiger of the Right was looking for trouble with him again. He saw that everyone in the class was looking at him and Xinyan strangely, so he brought Xinyan back to the terrace house first. Chapter 1909. Xinyan, sister-in-law as strong as Lin was, he couldn't do anything to his classmates. He couldn't just beat them all up, could he? It wasn't until he got back that Lin realized that the bed was already filled with luggage and blankets, but there was an empty space in the innermost part. Evidently, Bai Wei-Tuo had left it for himself and Xinyan. Lin didn't say anything and put his luggage on top of it. Xinyan, on the other hand, sat in the innermost seat, hugging her legs and curled up on the bed. She was silent, not sure what she was thinking. Lin didn't know how to comfort Xinyan. After all, something so embarrassing had happened, and Lin would only make things more awkward. Come take a walk with me, Xinyan said to Lin after a while. All right. Lin didn't ask why, and just nodded in agreement. Anything Xinyan asked for now, Lin would do as long as he could. Of course, this was based on the fact that Lin had a good impression of Xinyan, and that she was a friend. If it were someone random, Lin wouldn't care. Who asked her to be careless? The two left the room, not attracting any attention from her classmates. They were all sitting on the floor, playing cards or chatting. Lin and Xinyan turned to the gutter behind the room. There was no one there. However, the two of them walked halfway when they suddenly stopped their footsteps. There was a moaning sound coming from the gutter. Xinyan's face reddened, and Lin felt a little awkward as well. He naturally knew what the sound was and turned to the source. It was probably coming from the gutter behind another row house, not too far away. There was a partition between them, and they couldn't see what was going on over there, but it sounded like a couple sprinting Wang Xinyan couldn't see it, but it was enough to embarrass her. She couldn't help but remember the weird looks her classmates gave her when she and Lin Yi walked out from the back. Why don't we go somewhere else? Lin Yi sighed. These people have good stamina. They haven't eaten lunch, and dinner hasn't started yet. How can they still have the energy to do that? Nah, I'll just sit here for a bit, Xinyan said, afraid that she'd get laughed at again if she left the room. She covered her ears with her hands. All right. Lin Yi smiled bitterly as he accompanied Xinyan to sit on the stone steps of the gutter. The wind blew past, and Xinyan's scent was refreshing. Lin Yi felt very comfortable after taking a whiff of it. Lin Yi closed his eyes when Xinyan didn't say anything, starting to enjoy the moment as well. The noise quieted down after a while, and then came the sound of clothes being put on. Lin Yi nudged Xinyan with his wrist. All right, it's quiet now. That guy's a fast shooter. Xinyan blinked, but quickly understood what Lin Yi was getting at. She glared at Lin Yi. Fast shooter? Was he not fast? Lin Yi smiled bitterly. What is wrong with him? Why was his mouth so fast? Did he just say that a Xinyan like that? Lin Yi hadn't done it on purpose. He'd just been intoxicated by Xinyan's scent, and that was why he'd blurted it out. But Lin Yi hadn't smelled Xinyan's scent in the classroom. What was going on? Could this smell be coming from? Lin Yi looked at Xinyan's chest with a weird expression on his face. There was a bra covering it earlier, and now that it was gone, didn't that mean? What are you looking at? Xinyan jumped when she realized that Lin Yi was staring at her chest. She thought, is Lin Yi going to do something to me after hearing the sounds of the couple next door? Therefore, she subconsciously dodged to the side, but she lost her balance. Her whole body swayed, and she almost fell into the gutter. Lin Yi was shocked. He quickly reached out and grabbed Xinyan's waist, pulling her back. The inertia brought Xinyan into Lin Yi's arms. Xinyan moaned, embarrassed. She tried to push Lin Yi away, but she didn't realize it. Lin Yi didn't use any pure qi, and he was feeling guilty in the first place. With Xinyan's push and pull, they both fell into the gutter. But the moment they fell into the gutter, Lin Yi was afraid that Xinyan would fall, so he held her in his arms. Lin Yi, on the other hand, fell onto the stone floor of the gutter. It hadn't rained for a few days, and there wasn't even a drop of water in the gutter. Lin Yi fell onto the stone floor with a dull thud. A dash, Xinyan screamed. She regretted it the moment she fell. Lin, he wasn't that kind of person, was he? When Lin Yi fell onto the stone floor of the gutter while protecting her, Xinyan regretted it even more. She shouldn't have been so willful. She pressed down on Lin Yi and fell. How could Lin Yi recover? Even if his bones weren't broken, he'd be bruised all over, right? In actuality, Lin Yi was completely fine. He'd covered himself and Xinyan with pure qi the moment they fell. And even if he didn't use it, his skin was thick enough to withstand the fall. He'd survived old Lin's flying kick to the foot of West Star Mountain all those years ago. But Bai Weitu rushed over just as the two fell into the gutter. Big bro Lin? Boss. He'd just received a notice that dinner was about to start, and he was supposed to gather the students at the cafeteria. But Lin Yi and Xinyan were nowhere to be seen, and so Bai Weitu ran to the back of the house to look for them. He was panicking when he saw Xinyan lie on top of Lin, the two of them rolling around. I'm sorry, big brother Lin, sister-in-law Xinyan. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Let's eat. Bai Weitu let out a sigh of relief when he saw that the two of them still had their clothes on. Obviously, the two of them had just started and hadn't reached the next step yet. Otherwise, wouldn't it be embarrassing to see the two of them naked? Still, Bai Weitu admired Lin Yi quite a bit. He'd been served by Xinyan's mouth once in the car, and then he'd done it again when they were changing clothes. Now he was going to do it a third time. What a strong man. Bai Weitu, we were just sitting here talking, and your sis-in-law Xinyan. Huh? Lin Yi awkwardly stood up with Xinyan in his arms, calling her Xinyan's sis-in-law in the back of his mouth. Chapter 1910. The man in the dream Lin Yi felt quite helpless. Why did he keep making these kinds of stupid mistakes today? These were all kindergarten-level mistakes. He quickly changed his words when he saw the look on Xinyan's face. You're the one who made me fall in, Xinyan. I was trying to pull her up, but I fell in as well. Xinyan's eyes lit up as she looked at Xinyan. Oh, Bai Weituo said with a look of understanding, but anyone could see that he didn't believe him at all. It was no wonder, though. Lin, you want to pull Xinyan up when she fell down. So why was Lin on the bottom and Xinyan on top? It didn't make sense at all. But in reality, Lin wasn't lying. It was the truth, but no one believed the truth these days. What's with that expression? Lin was speechless. It's nothing, Lin bro. It's nothing. It's just a normal thing. Bai Weituo didn't know why Lin was being shy, but the guy didn't seem like the shy type at all. All right, lead the way. Lin cut Bai Weituo off when he saw that Xinyan's face was about to bleed. Let's go. The others are ready. Bai Weituo nodded and said nothing more. Xinyan bit her lips. She wanted to complain about Lin, but realized that he'd done it out of kindness. She might have broken herself if he didn't save her. But thinking about it, she wouldn't have dodged if Lin hadn't been staring at her breasts. She got pissed again at that thought. She stomped on Lin Yi's foot and snorted, ignoring Lin as she followed Bai Weituo on her own. Lin Yi stared at Xinyan's back as she stepped on his foot, spacing out a little. It wasn't because of Xinyan's stomp, but because he seemed to remember that there was once a girl who looked at him with this kind of angry eyes before stomping on his foot and running away. Who was this person? Lin Yi frowned. It was just a fleeting feeling, but after thinking about it, he didn't think that there would be such a person. The Miss and Shu wouldn't do something like this, and Xiao Xiao was even more impossible. Who could it be? Could it be the person in my dream? Sometimes, when a person experienced something, they would have a feeling of déjà vu, as if they had experienced it in a dream or in a previous life. This was a very mysterious feeling. Many people had experienced it, but it could not be explained by science. They could only say that they had seen it in a dream. Could it be that he'd seen Wang Xinyan in his dreams? Dreamed of her stepping on him? Looking at the back of the figure walking away, unknowingly, it seemed to overlap with a certain scene in his memory. Perhaps it was really a dream? Lin shook his head and quickly followed. The cafeteria here was huge, several times bigger than the cafeteria in Donghai Industry University. However, it didn't have as many sales windows as the cafeteria in Donghai Industry University. There was only a row of tables here, and on the left of the table were a few big buckets with 3 types of dishes: meat, vegetable, and soup. On the other side of the table were bowls of rice, steamed buns, and flower pots. Under the leadership of the class leaders, the students lined up, each holding a bowl and a bowl of soup. These were the daily necessities given to them during military training. Come here one by one later. There will be people to help you. Take the rice and other staples yourselves, but I hope you'll get into the habit of taking less and taking more. If you can't finish it when you take it back, if it's more than 1/10 of the plate, 1 point will be deducted. Be careful when you take the rice. Don't fight over it. 2 points will be deducted if you spill it. A soldier in charge of the cafeteria explained the rules of eating to the students after they'd gotten into position. The students who planned on taking more food immediately gave up when they heard that they'd lose points for leftovers. The points of military training were counted into their credits, and if they didn't have enough credits, they'd have to take other electives in order to graduate. There were a lot of people in the cafeteria, but the soldiers were very orderly. It didn't take long for people to get their plates one by one, and it wasn't long before it was Lin Yi's turn. Lin Yi and Wang Xinyan stood at the back of the line, the last to get food. The soldier had been serving the boys, and when it came to Wang Xinyan, he didn't see it clearly, so he gave her the boys' portion as well. Xinyan was about to ask him to take some back, but she realized that it wouldn't be appropriate to take it back now that she'd already scooped it up. There were students from other classes waiting behind them, too, and so she braced herself and left with him. You don't want the main course? Lin Yi asked curiously, seeing that Xinyan only had a bowl of egg soup. There'd a lot of food already. If I add the main course, I'm afraid that there'll be leftovers. Xinyan frowned as she looked at the food on the plate. Oh, it's fine. Lin Yi picked up 2 rolls and put them on Xinyan's plate. These rolls aren't bad. Eat some, or you'll be hungry tonight. Ah, Xin Yan was speechless. One roll was already a lot for her. And Lin, he was giving her two? I'll eat the rest. Lin, he was a big eater, and both Meng Yao and Yushu knew that firsthand. But Lin, he could eat as much as he wanted, and it didn't matter if he didn't eat at all. That was the benefit of being a practitioner. Xin Yan blushed. Lin, eating her leftovers? Wouldn't that be an indirect kiss? But Lin Yi's expression was normal, and his eyes were clear. Xin Yan knew that she was thinking too much. She nodded and found a table with Lin Yi. The two had just sat down when a commotion came from behind them. Lin Yi frowned. He heard a familiar voice in the commotion. It was by Wei Tuo's voice. Lin Yi was too lazy to care about other people's business, but Lin Yi couldn't ignore this wretched brat who kept calling him Big Brother Lin. Lin Yi was such a person. Once he decided on a friend, he would take care of it till the end. It didn't matter if it was complicated or simple, whether it was meaningful or not, whether it was a waste of time or not. Xin Yan, wait for me here. Bai Wei Tuo is arguing with someone. Lin Yi's expression was a little cold. Oh, be careful, Xin Yan said, realizing that she was overthinking things. With Lin Yi's strength, there was no way these students would be able to do anything to him. But do I care about him? Wang Xinyan rarely cared about other people, especially a guy, but at this moment, she did. It was from the bottom of her heart. Chapter 1911 72815 *= Translator Endless Fantasy Translation Editor Endless Fantasy Translation Lin Yi nodded and turned to walk towards the scene of the incident. There were already many people there, but Lin Yi was like a fish in water, quickly splitting the crowd and arriving at the center. Fan Ganha, are you doing this on purpose? You knocked my steamed bun to the ground. Do you want me to deduct points? Bai Wei Tuo was so angry that his face turned red. This Fan Ganha was really too much of a bully. After bumping into him, not only did he not apologize, he even had a gloating look on his face. I hit you? How am I supposed to hit you if you don't hit me? You can't even see where you're going, yet you're criticizing others? Fan Ganha sneered. Let me tell you, Bai Wei Tuo, if we hadn't drunk together before, I would have sent you flying to the Pacific Ocean with my fist. You. Bai Wei Tuo's chest heaved up and down. This Fan Ganha was a gifted student. If they were to really fight, the one at a disadvantage would definitely be him, Bai Wei Tuo. However, the steam bun fell to the ground. Bai Wei Tuo was unwilling to lose 2 points for no reason. You can pick it up. If you pick it up and eat it, you won't have to deduct points. Zhang Duopan's voice sounded from the side. It seemed like he was speaking up for Bai Wei Tuo, but wasn't it also insulting him? Oh, that's right. You can pick it up and eat it. Then you won't have to deduct any points. Fan Ganha kicked the 2 steamed buns on the ground. The 2 steamed buns rolled on the ground at Bai Wei Tuo's feet. The already dirty steamed buns became even dirtier. Bai Wei Tuo wanted to smash the plate in his hand on Fan Ganha's face, but he knew that he couldn't do that. If he did, it wouldn't be as simple as a deduction of 2 points. It would be a violation of the rules, and he would definitely be sent back to school by the instructor. He might even lose his military training credits. What happened to us? Everyone knows that every grain of food on the plate is hard work. Don't waste it. We have to be diligent and thrifty. Fan Ganha looked at Bai Wei Tuo mockingly. Last time at the KTV, Bai Wei Tuo and Lin Yi made Zhang Duopan and Fan Ganha lose face. Naturally, the two of them were unwilling to give up and wanted to find an opportunity to take revenge on Bai Wei Tuo. After hearing about the food discipline, they knew that the opportunity had come. Bai Wei Tuo took a deep breath. He was prepared to pick up the 2 steam buns on the ground first. If he left them on the plate and didn't eat them, he would lose 1 point at most. If he threw them on the ground, he would lose 2 points. This was a matter of academic credits, so he was prepared to bear with it. However, just as Bai Wei Tuo was about to bend down to pick up the 2 steamed buns on the ground, a hand beat him to it. The owner of this hand was Lin Yi. Lin Yi grabbed the two steamed buns from the ground and rubbed them against the soles of his shoes under the astonished gazes of the crowd before standing up. Issue. Zhang Duopan was baffled, Fan Ganha was baffled, and even Bai Weidoa was baffled. They didn't know what Lin Yi meant by this. Lin Yi narrowed his eyes and looked at Zhang Duopan and Fan Ganha. He smiled slightly, then suddenly reached out and pinched Zhang Duopan's cheeks and directly stood on top of it. Yef equals Shuai Pavilion. Net the dirty steamed buns covered in dust and the mud from the soles of Lin Yi's shoes were stuffed into Zhang Duopan's mouth. Ugh. Zhang Duopan didn't expect Lin to actually stuff the steamed bun into his mouth. He struggled with all his might to close his mouth, but Lin Yi's strength on his cheeks was too great. Zhang Duopan could only watch as Lin Yi stuffed the dirty steamed bun into his mouth. Who knows that every grain on a plate is hard work? Since you're so afraid of wasting food, then you can eat it, Lin Yi said expressionlessly. He didn't forget to pinch Zhang Duopan's throat and let the steamed bun enter his esophagus. Cough. Ugh. Zhang Duopan pinched his throat and coughed violently. The steamed bun was so stuck that he couldn't breathe, and his face turned purple. Your mother, you don't want to live anymore, do you? Fan Ganha was stunned by Lin Yi's actions. When Zhang Duopan coughed, he finally reacted. He pointed at Lin Yi and said angrily, "You're courting death." However, before he could finish, Lin Yi casually waved his hand and stuffed another dirty steamed bun into Fan Ganha's mouth. His words also became mug. Bai Weidoa and the surrounding students stared blankly at Lin Yi. They didn't expect Lin Yi to be so ruthless. Only Yupan Hu laughed coldly. It seemed that Lin Yi didn't dare to go too far. With Lin Yi's personality, he would have just killed anyone who messed with him. Why would he go through the trouble of teaching someone a lesson? In reality, Lin Yi wouldn't just randomly kill people in the school. It was Yupan Hu who misunderstood. What's going on? What happened? A voice sounded. It was the head instructor, Chen Yutian. Naturally, someone went to inform head instructor Chen Yutian about the conflict. Cough, cough. Wah. Zhang Duopan coughed again and finally spat out the dirty steamed bun. He almost choked to death. Fan Ganha, on the other hand, dug out the steamed bun with his fingers for a long time before throwing it away. He was panting heavily. Bai Weidoa's face paled when he saw how big the situation was. He didn't expect things to escalate to this extent. Although he was grateful for Lin Yi's help, he was also worried that he'd implicated Lin Yi. He was only supposed to get his points deducted, but now Lin Yi was in trouble. Instructor Chun. These two people were too greedy. They choked and vomited. Lin Yi pointed at Fan Ganha and Zhang Duopan. Looks like they're wasting food. Shouldn't we deduct their points? Everyone at the scene was flabbergasted. Lin Yi was lying through his teeth. Wasting food. Deduct 2 points from these two. Chen Yuqian glanced at Fan Ganha and Zhang Duopan and said faintly, "What?" Zhang Duopan panicked. He didn't expect to get his points deducted. Head instructor, it's him. He forced a steamed bun into my mouth. Oh, why did he force it into your mouth? Chen Yuqian asked. Zhang Duopan didn't know what to say. He was the one who made Fan Ganha do that, so he couldn't explain himself. But since Chen Yuqian asked, he could only force himself to say, because these two steamed buns fell on the ground. It was him, Bai Weidoa, who dropped them. We came to persuade him not to waste food, but this Lin Yi picked them up and stuffed them into our mouths. Tisk. Zhang Duopan's words attracted a wave of disgust from the students. They'd seen everything with their own eyes, after all, and if they were to say that Lin Yi was lying through his teeth, then these two were twisting the fact to make a deer out of a horse. Oh, how did you persuade him? Chen Yuqian continued. Target equals _blank. Chapter 1912. 728:15 *= Chapter 1924. Late autumn night, Chen Yuqian knew that Lin Yi wasn't someone who liked to cause trouble. He wouldn't provoke others unless they provoked him. So Chen Yuqian knew that this wasn't Lin Yi's fault. Zhang Duopan didn't expect Chen Yuqian to ask so many questions. They kicked the steamed buns twice and let Bai Weiduo pick them up and eat them. Song Xiaodao said from his side. Is that so? Chen Yutian turned to Zhang Duopan and Fan Ganha. The two of them knew that with so many classmates watching, it was absolutely impossible for them to lie at this moment. They could only stammer and not dare to admit it. Wasting food and causing trouble. Both of you. I'll deduct 4 points each. Chen Yuqian turned and left after finishing his sentence. Fan Ganha and Zhang Duopan regretted it for a while. If they had known this would happen, they wouldn't have explained it. Now that they had explained it, 2 more points were deducted. What was this? Bai Weiduo found it strange that Chen Yutian seemed to be siding with him. But he was the victim, so he didn't think too much about it. He laughed happily. Justice is in everyone's heart. Some people just shot themselves in the foot. Humph. Let's see who's better at the freshman's party. Zhang Duopan pulled Fan Ganha along. The two of them left some harsh words and quickly left. They couldn't afford to lose face like this. After Zhang Duopan and Fan Ganha left, Bai Weiduo patted Lin Yi's shoulder and said excitedly, Big brother Lin, you're so cool. Let's go eat. Lin Yi said with a smile. Xinyan, on the other hand, couldn't help but cover her mouth and smile at the scene. This Lin Yi really was a violent maniac, wasn't he? At another table not far away, Himeiwa looked at Zhang Duopan with some disappointment. In the past, she felt that Zhang Duopan was a good person. Although she didn't have a good impression of him, she didn't have any bad impression of him either. However, what Zhang Duopan did today was simply disgusting. Although Bai Weiduo's previous performance was somewhat cowardly, Himeiwa did not feel that he was cowardly. Fan Ganha was a gifted student. Ordinary students were not his match. Bai Weiduo was simply asking for a beating. As for Lin Yi, Himeiwa shook her head. You really couldn't judge a book by its cover. Who would have thought that a gentleman would be so violent? Of course, Himeiwa didn't care about Lin Yi at all. He didn't admit to his relationship with Xinyan, but she could tell from the way he sat next to her that their relationship wasn't normal. Although this small episode was intense, it subsided quickly. Everyone was hungry. Moreover, this was the army, and there were very strict rules, so everyone found a place to eat. However, what happened just now made them relish in talking about it. After the meal, the students all returned to their own barracks. It was 6 o'clock sharp, and they were all in front of their barracks. After the medicine class, Chen Yuqian appeared in front of everyone very quickly. Reporting, instructor. I am the class monitor Bai Weiduo. Please instruct me. Bai Weiduo stepped out. Very good, Bai Weiduo is back. Chen Yuqian nodded, satisfied. Tomorrow will be the start of your official military training. The 1st to 3rd days will be marching, and formation training. The 4th to 6th days will be military boxing training, and the 7th to 8th days will be field training. After the 8th day, there will be formation, military boxing, and kickboxing. The winning class and individual will be rewarded with 5 to 10 credits. No one expected that other than the normal credits, there would be bonus credits as well. It was quite a lot too, from 5 to 10. Don't be too happy yet. Only the top 3 of each competition will be rewarded, whether it's a group or individual. Chen Yutian said faintly. The field training is based on faculties, but the first 3 groups to return from each class will be rewarded with 2 credits each. College credits were both difficult and easy to obtain. Many elective courses such as etiquette, social interaction, and so on were easy to obtain. However, sometimes one would still lack some credits before graduation. It would be difficult to take those courses that one had not taken before, especially for students who chose double majors. Credits were even more important. So, if they could get more credits at this time, no one would complain about it. After Chen Yutian finished his lecture, he led the students to do a few simple movements in front of the barracks. For example, at ease, attention, turn left, turn right, and so on. These were all things they learned in middle school, so it wasn't hard at all. It was just a warm-up. Then, Chen Yutian led the students to jog a few rounds around the barracks before dismissing them. The first day's training wasn't much, but it was still too much for the students to handle. They collapsed on their beds after returning to the barracks. Right Pan Hu, yellow hair, and purple hair were on the other side of the bed. These three were the oddballs, and it was obvious that they weren't easy to get along with. The students in the class didn't provoke them, and they didn't want to talk to anyone either. On the other side of the bed, Yef equals, Booksy Pavilion. On the other side were Lin, Yi, and Xinyan. Xinyan was lying quietly beside Lin Yi. She was wearing clothes, but she couldn't help but feel a little nervous. Rest early. We have to wake up at 6 tomorrow morning, Lin Yi said after looking at the time. Yeah. Xinyan snuck a peek at the calm Lin Yi, feeling a little nervous. This was the first time she'd shared a bed with a boy. She was wearing clothes, and it was military training, too, but Xinyan couldn't help but feel a little nervous. It was fine when the lights were on, but now that the power was off, she was a little nervous. What are you thinking about? Eyes wide open, Lin Yi asked with a smile. Xinyan still hadn't rested after a while. You can see me? Xinyan was a little surprised. There was no light in the barracks at night, and it was pitch black outside the window. Only the faint moonlight shone in from a window not far away, but it was very weak. She couldn't see what was going on in the barracks. Your eyes are so bright. I can see you. Lin Yi couldn't help but tease. Xinyan pursed her lips, not knowing what to say. After a while, she harumphed. Nonsense, I'm not a wolf. Go to sleep, Lin Yi said before closing his eyes. Xinyan waited for a while, and seeing that Lin Yi wasn't talking anymore, she fell asleep as well. Late autumn nights were very cold. Everyone was wearing thick camouflage clothing, but there were no blankets. It was still a little chilly. Target equals _blank. Chapter 1913. Date: October 11th. Xinyan was only wearing a tank top under her camouflage fatigue. It was only natural for her to feel cold, and so she subconsciously searched for warmth, burrowing into Lin Yi's arms. It was very warm here. Lin didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he looked at the sleeping Wang Xinyan in his arms out of nowhere. Lin Yi hadn't slept at all. He'd closed his eyes to train in the Jade Space. Ever since he'd learned the secrets of the Jade Space, Lin Yi hadn't slept at all. His perception of the outside world was still very strong, and so when Xinyan ran into his arms, Lin Yi sensed it immediately. Lin Yi shook his head and came out of the Jade Space. He wanted to push Xinyan away, but he didn't want to let her go. Hugging Xinyan gave him a peace of mind, and Lin Yi couldn't help but fall into a trance as he took in the faint scent of Xinyan's body. The scent made Lin Yi very comfortable, and so Lin Yi couldn't help but sniff a few more times. All of a sudden, he felt a heat in his abdomen, and Lin Yi jumped in fright. Did he have some sort of feelings for Xinyan? If that were the case, it'd be very awkward if Xinyan found out. At that thought, Lin Yi hurriedly channeled the second stage of the art of dragon mastery, trying to dispel the fire in his body. But as soon as Lin Yi's chi touched the fire in his abdomen, Lin Yi was confused. This wasn't that kind of fire. Lin Yi could tell if it was because of him, but if that wasn't the case, then could this heat be because of Xinyan's fragrance? But no matter what the reason was, Lin Yi didn't dare to delay, and had already started to use his pure chi to dissolve that ball of fire. But in the next moment, Lin Yi was surprised to find that after the ball of fire was dissolved, it seemed to have become pure chi that filled his body, and his strength was also continuously increasing. After the ball of fire was dissolved, Lin Yi's strength actually had an obvious increase. Although he still hadn't reached the barrier of Earth-class early phase peak in Chapter 1925, he was getting closer and closer to that barrier. Lin Yi was very puzzled. Why was his strength increasing? Moreover, this speed was clearly faster than just channeling the second stage of the art of dragon mastery. It wasn't by much, but it was fast. Lin Yi could feel it. Perhaps it really was because of the fragrance on Xinyan's body? Lin Yi frowned, secretly surprised. But since he found such a good opportunity, he didn't want to waste it. It wasn't easy to get a chance to share a bed with Xinyan. Of course, he'd want to absorb more of this fragrance to train. Otherwise, Xinyan might not agree to it when he got back to school. Lin Yi didn't sleep that night, and his body kept channeling the art of dragon mastery until dawn. Xin Yan was a bit cold in the middle of the night and naturally went to find warmth. She opened her eyes in the morning to find herself in Lin Yi's arms. She was a bit surprised, but then she saw that Lin Yi wasn't hugging her, but she was hugging Lin Yi. Xin Yan was relieved, but also embarrassed. Lin Yi didn't do anything to her, but she threw herself into his arms. How shameless! If Lin Yi saw this, what would Lin Yi think? With that thought, Xin Yan tried to get out of Lin Yi's arms. She sneaked a glance at Lin Yi and realized that Lin Yi's eyes were closed. She quickly moved her body inwards, but Lin Yi felt it. Lin Yi hadn't slept at all. He'd been training the whole time, and so he spoke subconsciously. Xin Yan, you're awake? Xin Yan didn't expect Lin Yi to wake up earlier than her. Was Lin Yi pretending to be asleep with his eyes closed? This guy was trying to take advantage of her when he was awake. No. Xin Yan suddenly remembered that if Lin Yi wanted to take advantage of her, he could have just hugged her. Why'd he have to do this? Xin Yan understood after a bit of thought. Lin Yi probably didn't want to disturb her, seeing that she was sleeping soundly. Even so, Xin Yan still felt embarrassed. I was a bit cold last night. It's fine. I don't mind being a heater. Lin Yi really didn't mind. Lin Yi had a good impression of Xin Yan in the first place, and now that Xin Yan's scent was good for his training, Lin Yi didn't mind at all. In fact, he liked it. I'm up. Xin Yan quickly got out of bed, seeing that the conversation was getting more and more intimate. In fact, there were a lot of students who woke up at this time, but it was still early. There was still some time before 6, so they wanted to rest a bit more. Xin Yan went to the washroom to wash her face, and Lin Yi got up as well. Bai Wei-Tuo saw that someone was up, and he, as the class monitor, couldn't stay in bed. But since Lin Yi and Xin Yan were the first to wake up, Bai Wei-Tuo didn't find it embarrassing at all. Woo woo woo, a loud wake-up call sounded. It was 5:50, and they were ready. All the students in the barracks ran out and lined up in front of the barracks. Chen Yutian showed up at 6 sharp, and the day's training began. The training for the first 3 days was simple. It was what they had practiced in middle and high school. Marching, changing lines, and so on. Although it was tiring, they could still persist. No more unpleasantness happened in the cafeteria. With Zhang Duopan and Fan Ganhe as an example, no one dared to cause any more trouble. As for how Chen Yutian handled the two, other than Zhang Duopan and Fan Ganhe, who were a little dissatisfied, the others didn't think that Chen Yutian was unfair. Although Lin Yi was a little harsh, he was still standing up for his classmate. In everyone's eyes, it was an act of brotherhood. Since they weren't punished, it meant that Chen Yutian was an open-minded instructor. In fact, if it weren't for Lin Yi, Chen Yutian would have punished them as well. But since it was related to Lin Yi, he was biased. What made Lin Yi disappointed was that he didn't see Meng Yao and Yushu in the cafeteria. Book C Pavilion, this wasn't the only cafeteria. Perhaps the students from the economics faculty were sent to other cafeterias and they didn't meet. This kind of intense training was nothing to Lin Yi. What made Lin Yi the happiest was sleeping with Wang Xinyan every night. It wasn't that Lin Yi was lustful, but the fragrance on Wang Xinyan's body could speed up Lin Yi's training. 3 days. 3 days of training was equivalent to half a month of training for Lin Yi. Chapter 1914. Although Lin Yi's mastery of the second stage of the art of dragon mastery was partly due to this, Wang Xinyan's scent played an important role. Although Wang Xinyan would hug Lin Yi every morning, it was a little awkward, but as time went by, the awkwardness faded away. Now, Wang Xinyan wasn't as shy as before because Lin Yi didn't take advantage of her, and she didn't do it on purpose. There was no need for the two of them to be awkward. Just like what Lin Yi said, the two of them were good friends. From the 4th day onwards, it was military boxing. Military boxing. Most of the students had heard of this name, but they had never practiced it. After all, there were Muay Thai, Sanda, Taekwondo, and even Tai Chi in the martial arts training classes, but there were very few that taught military boxing. They were curious about this boxing technique that everyone in the military practiced. Only you coiling tiger had a disdainful smile on his face. Military boxing, although it sounds ordinary, is a boxing technique that every soldier in the army knows. Many people think that it's only for strengthening their bodies. Chen Yuqian paused for a moment before continuing. Military boxing can strengthen your body, but it's also a very practical fighting style. It's very effective when you're fighting with your enemies in close combat. Not to mention normal soldiers. Even the special forces might use military boxing when fighting against enemies. So, if you practice military boxing well, it will guarantee your safety in the future. If you can use military boxing well when you meet an enemy, you won't have a problem protecting yourself, even if you can't kill the bad guys. These words made the students present look forward to it. Yes, if they could learn this fist technique well, wouldn't they not be taken advantage of by the bad guys when they encounter danger in the future? Even Lin nodded in agreement. Military boxing was a set of martial arts that had been tempered by countless elite soldiers. Chen Yuqian wasn't exaggerating at all. Ha-dash! At this moment, someone laughed untimely, as if he was very disdainful of Chen Yuqian's words. Who laughed just now? Is there anything wrong? Chen Yuqian's face darkened. He didn't expect such a student to exist. Sir, I've seen him before. There's someone in our class who's very strong as well. Your military boxing might not be his match. The one who spoke was the blonde, Tiger Right's follower, the one Lin Yi had taught a lesson to. Previously, when Pan Hu Yu saw Lin Yi's actions in the cafeteria, he guessed that Lin Yi did not dare to cause trouble on campus. So he began to carry out his plan. He had Huang Mao create some trouble for Lin Yi to disgust Lin Yi. It would be best if Lin Yi could deduct some credits so that he could suffer in silence. This was the highest level of pranking people. Oh, who are you talking about? Chen Yuqian frowned as he looked at the blonde's hair color. A trace of disgust flashed through his eyes. This guy was probably a gangster, doing whatever he wanted in school, just because his family was rich. However, this was the military, not a school. Naturally, Chen Yuqian wouldn't let him do whatever he wanted. It's Lin Yi. He's a martial arts master. Huang Mao pointed at Lin Yi's direction. Oh, how do you know he's a martial arts master? Are you one too? Chen Yuqian asked. Huang Mao didn't expect Chen Yuqian to point his spear at him. He was caught off guard. Right coiling tiger furrowed his brows. He had been feeling proud of his plan. After all, now that he'd said that, it would be difficult for Lin Yi to decide whether to accept the challenge or not. From Tiger Right's point of view, it would be easy for Lin Yi to defeat this instructor with his strength. But if he defeated the instructor, wouldn't he lose face? Would Lin Yi be able to do well in the military training in the future? Even if the instructor didn't hold a grudge against Lin Yi would still be reprimanded by the school when he returned. But if Lin Yi admitted defeat on purpose, with a strength that could even defeat an Earth-class master, wouldn't it be a very frustrating thing to admit defeat to a normal instructor? If he didn't accept the challenge, Lin Yi would be disobeying orders. Disobeying orders in military training would also result in points deduction. However, Tiger Right didn't expect that the conflict would be shifted back to the blonde. I'm asking you a question. How do you know that Lin Yi is a master? Chen Yuqian yelled at the blonde. The blonde didn't know how to explain. Since you know that he's a master, then I see that you're a master as well. Come, fight me and show us military boxing. Chen Yuqian knew that the blonde didn't have any good intentions. He wanted to teach him a lesson so that he wouldn't stop. Even if the blonde wasn't against Lin Yi, Chen Yuqian didn't have a good impression of him with his gangster outfit. Me? Even if he could not graduate, it did not matter. He was just a guest in the Yu family. His education was of no use to him. Hence, the yellow hair chuckled. I can go, but instructor, let's make this clear first. What if I win your military boxing? The yellow hair man was slightly stunned, but he was not afraid. He was here to accompany his young master to study. You coiling tiger cared about credits, but the yellow hair did not care. Even if he could not graduate, it did not matter. Win? What do you say? Chen Yuqian didn't expect the blonde to dare to raise a condition. He focused his eyes and wanted to see where the blonde got his confidence from. Unfortunately, Chen Yuqian didn't have the foresight that Lin Yi had. Internal martial arts experts would only reveal their true strength when they were circulating their innate qi. If they did not deliberately reveal their true strength, then they would only reveal their true strength in battle or when they were using qing gong movement techniques. Physical masters didn't have true energy in their body. They could only use their strong physique to activate the true energy in nature. Therefore, Lin Yi wouldn't be able to see their true strength if they didn't make a move. If I win, the three of us won't participate in the military training anymore. But you have to give us full marks for the military training, and you have to give us bonus points as well. The blonde pointed at him, tiger right, and purple hair. Fine. Although it's against the rules, I'll still agree to it. Since you can't beat me, I'll show you what military boxing is. Chen Yuqian laughed coldly. Yeah, remember what you said. The blonde laughed and started to activate his incantation. In an instant, the strength of the early phase of the mystic class was revealed. Chen Yuqian's eyes flashed with surprise. He didn't expect a gangster to be a master of the early phase of the mystic class. Target equals _ blank. Chapter 1915. Of course, Chen Yuqian didn't put in his eyes. He was a master at the peak of the late phase of the mystic class, and his strength had been stabilized. Why would he be afraid of the yellow hair? Attack me. You can use all kinds of moves. I'll only use military boxing. Chen Yuqian pretended not to see the yellow hair's strength and said indifferently. The yellow hair sneered in his heart. Pretending? It seems like you don't even know what a cultivator is, and you want to beat me with military boxing? Even if you practice military boxing to the extreme, you're still a normal person. The difference between you and a cultivator is like heaven and earth. Remember what you said. The yellow hair didn't say much and swung his fist. Of course, he was afraid that he would kill Chen Yuqian with one punch. So he only used the strength of the early phase of the golden class to teach Chen Yuqian a lesson. Bang! The blonde's fist landed on Chen Yuqian's arm, and Chen Yuqian's move was a defensive move in the military boxing. The yellow hair thought that even if he couldn't break Chen Yuqian's arm, he would at least send him flying. However, Chen Yuqian didn't move an inch, and the yellow hair retreated a few steps under Chen Yuqian's defense, falling on his butt. Ha ha ha! Seeing the yellow-haired guy sitting on the ground, all the students present burst into laughter. This guy was so arrogant at the beginning. He even wanted the instructor to exempt them from military training. Not only that, he even wanted extra points. Who did he think he was? Chen Yuqian didn't want to hurt the yellow hair, so he controlled his strength to the peak of the early phase of the mystic class, suppressing the yellow hair. One had to know that the difference between an earth class and an earth class was one level, and they could kill their opponent. So Chen Yuqian only used military boxing to defend and didn't attack the yellow hair, wanting him to back off. But the yellow hair was too careless. If he used his full strength, he wouldn't fall on his butt like this, even if he couldn't do anything to Chen Yuqian. Peak of the early phase of the mystic class. The yellow hair looked at Chen Yuqian in disbelief. Since when were there so many cultivators? One had to know that he was from a hidden house, and that was why he had the strength of a mystic class. Chen Yuqian was just a military instructor, and yet he was stronger than him. Right Coiling Tiger and Purple Hair were practitioners as well. They couldn't see through Chen Yuqian's strength before, and they'd be idiots if they still couldn't. Right Coiling Tiger's face changed. Yellow hair, come back. Purple hair, you go. Yes. The purple hair man nodded. He was a mid-phase mystic class master, a head above Chen Yuqian, so he agreed without hesitation. I didn't expect Instructor Chen to be a master. Since that's the case, I'll take 2 of your attacks for my brother. Purple hair stood up and said to Chen Yuqian indifferently. Oh, since you're here, then come. Look carefully. If you meet these little hoodlums in the future, be like me, and you won't be bullied by them. Chen Yuqian used these 2 as examples to explain to the students. The purple-haired man was pissed. He was a mid-phase mystic class master, not a hoodlum. But this wasn't the time to talk, and Chen Yutian didn't point out his name. The purple-haired man could only hold it in for now. He'd defeat Chen Yutian later, and that would be the best way to retaliate. Haha. Yes, Instructor Chun. We're watching carefully. The students said. Peak of the early phase mystic class. Is that strong? The purple-haired man sneered at Chen Yutian. He activated his internal arts, revealing his strength as a mid-phase mystic class master. Come, continue to attack me. Chen Yutian glanced at the purple-haired man, and he was even more shocked. There was a mid-phase mystic class? What kind of class was this? There were hidden dragons and crouching tigers. But compared to an Earth-class master like Lin Yi, these people were too weak. The purple-haired man froze. This Chen Yutian was only at the peak of the early phase mystic class, but he wasn't afraid of him, a mid-phase mystic class master, and even asked him to attack him. Was he an idiot? A high-level master attacking an Earth-class master. Wasn't that a one-sided attack? Hurry up, don't waste everyone's time. Chen Yutian looked at the purple-haired man impatiently. The purple-haired man was pissed. He snorted coldly and kicked towards Chen Yutian. Since Chen Yutian was a master at the peak of the early phase mystic class, the purple-haired man didn't need to hold back anymore. He would use his full strength and injure Chen Yutian. He was at the peak of the early phase mystic class anyways, and he wouldn't die. The purple-haired man wanted Chen Yutian to suffer in silence. He was the one who asked him to attack. Even if he injured Chen Yutian, he could only pinch his nose and accept it. He was the one who agreed to the conditions of winning. However, when the purple-haired man kicked, Chen Yutian also used a military boxing to win. But what shocked the purple-haired man was that Chen Yutian wasn't a master at the peak of the early phase mystic class. He was clearly at the peak of the late phase mystic class. The purple-haired man regretted it, but it was too late. The moment his foot touched Chen Yutian's fist, he flew backwards. The distance he flew was much further than the yellow-haired man. He flew to the edge of the training ground and landed heavily on the ground, screaming in pain. Ouch! This was the result of Chen Yutian holding back. Otherwise, with Chen Yutian's strength, killing the purple-haired man was as easy as playing with a toy. Wah! The students at the scene immediately gasped in surprise, followed by thunderous applause. Chen Yutian's move was too cool. It looked like an ordinary move, but it had such power. It was like a stunt scene in a martial arts movie. A normal person's punch could only knock someone down, but this kind of punch could send someone flying so far away. Ordinary people couldn't even see it. It was something that could only be seen in movies. Chen Yutian's punch could only be seen in movies. But now, it happened in front of everyone's eyes. It turned out that those scenes in the movie were not a lie to attract attention. But in fact, there really was such a powerful person who could do it. Yellow hair, purple hair, right coiling tiger, you violated the rules. Run 100 laps around the barracks, or you can't have lunch. Chen Yutian glanced at right coiling tiger. He knew that these three were in cahoots. Since the yellow-haired man and the purple-haired man weren't ordinary people, this right coiling tiger was probably a practitioner as well. Running 100 laps wasn't a big deal. Yes, the yellow-haired man, the purple-haired man, and right coiling tiger were furious, but they didn't dare to act rashly. This instructor was actually a master at the peak of the late phase mystic class. In front of such a master, they couldn't fight back. Seeing the three running laps, the students at the scene burst into laughter. Target equals underscore blank. Chapter 1916. Field Training. All right, everyone has seen the power of military boxing. Now, are you guys willing to learn from me? Chen Yutian asked. Yes. After witnessing Chen Yutian's power with their own eyes, who wouldn't be willing to learn? In fact, military boxing was indeed powerful, but it depended on the person using it. If Chen Yutian wasn't a mystic class master, he wouldn't be able to send someone flying with just one punch. However, Chen Yutian was more than happy to use this method to motivate the students. Seeing was believing. His fight with the blonde and purple hair was more convincing than any explanation. He believed that the medical major would be one of the classes that studied military boxing the most seriously. Under Chun Yutian's guidance, everyone practiced enthusiastically. Even Wang Xinyan was sweating from exhaustion, but she was still very serious. "Fuck, master you. Why are we so unlucky?" The blonde said helplessly as he ran. "This is weird. Any instructor is a mystic class master. Mystic class masters are so worthless." Yu Coiling Tiger frowned, but a wise man knows better than to fight when the odds are against him. "Let's run. We'll teach that Linny a lesson when we get back. I thought that boss spy wouldn't be around during the military training, and I wanted to discuss Lin Yi a little." "What a lucky bastard," the purple hair said. However, as soon as the purple hair finished speaking, Chun Yutian scolded, "What are you three mumbling about? You seem to be very energetic. Add another 100 laps." Chun Yutian glanced at Yu Coiling Tiger. Although this guy was only a golden class master, running a few hundred laps wouldn't tire him out, so he added another 100 laps for them. Yu Coiling Tiger and the others groaned in their hearts, but there was nothing they could do. In the blink of an eye, another 3 days passed. The next program was field training. This was one of the most important programs in the military training, and it was also the toughest training. This was a test of everyone's ability to survive in the wild. Early in the morning, a few buses brought all the biology students to the foot of a mountain about 50 kilometers away from the army camp. This was a nameless mountain range, not far from the border. The training this time was for 3 people to form a group and go up the mountain to find a small flag at a designated location. Because each flag was placed in a different position, each flag had a GPS positioning device, and each team would be randomly given a GPS receiver. Only by following the coordinates on the receiver could they find a flag, and the first 3 teams to find the flag would each receive 2 extra points as a reward. The training would last for 2 days, starting from this morning and ending tomorrow night. The teams that did not find the flag would only have 1 military training credit deducted. Although this training looked very simple, with the GPS coordinates indicating, how difficult would it be to actually find it? This mountain was not a tourist attraction. There were no ready-made paths at all. Although the mountain walls were not steep, the forest was still covered with jungles. It was obviously not an easy task to pass through the layers of jungles to find the target. Moreover, the location of each flag was different. There was no chance of working together in such a big mountain. They could only rely on the 2 people in the same team to find the flag. Chun Yutian taught the students some essential knowledge of survival in the wild. Although there weren't any beasts on the mountain, most of the students grew up in the city. They didn't have any survival experience in the wild. It would be bad if something happened. However, just in case, Chun Yutian still had a backup plan. There's a red switch behind this GPS coordinate device. This is an emergency warning switch. If you guys really meet with danger on the mountain, just flip this switch and we will know your coordinates. The rescue team will rush to the scene immediately. Chun Yutian said, "Of course, if you don't meet with danger and just randomly flip the switch, I will also cancel your point for this field training. I hope everyone can cooperate with each other, and the 3 of you must learn to support each other. I don't want any of you to fall behind. If any of you fall behind, no matter if you find the flag or not, your points will be deducted directly." Everyone was worried when they heard that they had to go up the mountain alone to find the flag, but with this emergency switch, there was no problem. As for falling behind, no one thought about it. No one could leave their classmate behind. All right, next, students from all classes form groups of 3. Come here to collect the GPS, compressed biscuits, drinking water, medical kit, and camping supplies, Chun Yutian said. The number of people in Lin Yi's class wasn't a multiple of 3. There were 2 extra people, so Lin Yi didn't hesitate and formed a group with Xinyan. Normally, they would find an extra student from another class to form a group, but Chun Yutian knew how strong Lin Yi was. Lin Yi could carry Xinyan up the mountain without a problem, so he agreed without hesitation. After all the groups had collected their things, everyone prepared to go up the mountain under Chun Yutian's orders. However, not long after they went up the mountain, They didn't have anyone in the same direction. Their flags weren't in the same position, and they were scattered all over the place. The mountain was big and tall, and very few people were willing to take detours with others. Most of them chose the straight distance on the GPS. However, on a mountain like this, even if it was a straight distance, it was impossible to walk in a straight line. After all, there were some rocks and trees that had to be detoured. Xinyan was a little embarrassed as she looked at Lin Yi carrying all the luggage. Lin Yi, can you share some of this with me? Most groups had 3 guys, and there wasn't much to share even if there was more, but Lin Yi's group was small to begin with, and Xinyan was a girl, so the heavy burden fell on Lin Yi's shoulders. It's fine, these aren't heavy at all. Just maintain your stamina. If you collapse from exhaustion, I'll have to carry you as well. Won't that be more tiring? Lin Yi smiled. Oh, Xinyan blushed a little. She didn't know why, but she was looking forward to it. She didn't know when it started, but Xinyan was getting used to the feeling of Lin Yi beside her. It had only been a few days, but she felt like she was relying on him. Xinyan didn't know if this feeling was good or bad, but she didn't reject it. It was the first time in her life that she was this close to a boy. She was surprised that she didn't hate Lin Yi at all. Chapter 1917. No other meaning. Xinyan was a quiet person, and she'd never fallen for a man before. She even had a natural repulsion towards men, and the reason for that was her 2 uncles being too evil. They'd never liked her since she was a child, and that had given her a bad impression of other men. But she never felt that way since she'd met Lin Yi. Perhaps it was because of the chance encounter on the train, and she felt pity for him when she saw him getting tricked. She'd been surprised to find out that it wasn't Lin Yi who'd been tricked, but the scammers. She'd been curious about what Lin Yi was like. The second time they'd met was in the business district of Songshan. She'd gotten into some trouble, and Lin Yi had taken care of it easily. From that moment on, Xinyan felt that Lin Yi was a good friend. But the time they'd truly opened their hearts to each other was that time on the plane when she'd been feeling down. She'd told him a lot about her life and worries, and from then on, they'd become closer than just normal friends. They could be considered good friends now. Step by step, Xinyan realized that Lin Yi was a good person, and a good one at that. But thinking about it, Lin Yi might be a good person in her eyes, but in the eyes of the Xiao family, Lin Yi was a super bully. The 2 climbed for about a kilometer, and Xinyan was starting to run out of stamina. It had been easier to start, but now it was getting more and more difficult. There were branches, leaves, and mud everywhere, and it slowed them down quite a bit. Of course, if it weren't for Xinyan, Lin Yi would have been able to find Xiao Qi and come back with ease. This sort of jungle route was a piece of cake for Lin Yi, after all. Back in the primeval forest in Africa, a place full of wild beasts, snakes, swamps, poisonous plants, and bugs, Lin Yi was still able to run like he was flying. Let's rest if you're tired, Lin Yi said after finding a relatively clean spot. It's okay, I can still hold on. Xinyan didn't want to rest so soon. How long would they be able to find Xiao Qi if they kept resting? It's okay. The scenery here is beautiful. Just take it as a view, Lin Yi said with a smile. Look at the maple leaves all over the mountains. How beautiful. As far as Lin Yi was concerned, if he couldn't find it in the end, he'd just run over and take the flag back, and that would count as completing the mission. As for the top 3, Lin Yi didn't really care about them. Boss Bai had already guaranteed that he'd be able to graduate smoothly, so why would he need credits? Boss Bai was the boss in the Faculty of Medicine. With his promise, even the principal would not say anything. Yeah, it's really beautiful. Xinyan sat down as well after hearing Lin Yi's words. She couldn't help but think of a poem as she looked at the red leaves. Far away on the coal mountain, there is a house in the depths of the clouds. Stop to love the maple forest at night. The frost leaves are redder than flowers in February. It was just a random poem, but Xinyan's face reddened when she said it out loud. The third line of the poem, stop and sit in love with the maple forest, had been changed by some bored people to stop and sit in love with the maple forest to describe car vibrations. Xinyan had just been on campus 2 days ago. Xinyan had read it on campus 2 days ago. I'm just saying, I don't mean anything by it, Xinyan added. Lenny looked at Xinyan, confused. What's wrong? What do you mean by nothing by it? Xinyan didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she looked at Lin Yi's face. Was she overthinking things? Lin Yi hadn't thought of all this, but she couldn't just explain it to him. Lin Yi hadn't thought of all this, and it wouldn't be good if she explained it like that. It's nothing. Nothing. Lin Yi frowned as he thought back to what Xinyan had said. You said stop? Lin Yi had been on campus when he was looking into the school's affairs. He'd seen someone tampering with the poem on QQ, but Xinyan was referring to this. No, I didn't. Why are your thoughts so impure? Xinyan's face reddened. Wasn't she just making him even more curious after saying that she didn't have anything to do with it? It would have been better if she hadn't reminded him, but he remembered now. Lin Yi shrugged helplessly. You're the one who said it first. All right, I'm done resting. Let's keep going, Xinyan said, changing the topic. With that, she stood up and started walking. Lin Yi smiled faintly. Xinyan was quite an interesting character. She didn't look like she didn't belong to the world, but she was a little cold in front of people she wasn't familiar with. Once they got to know each other, her personality would become more cheerful. She was similar to the Miss in this regard, but not exactly the same. The Miss was cold on the outside but warm on the inside, but she wouldn't be as quiet as Xinyan. They walked for a while, and it was almost noon. Lin Yi took out a pack of biscuits from his bag. Hungry? Do you want to eat something first? I'm not that hungry yet. Maybe we can wait a bit longer? Xinyan was afraid that it wouldn't be enough. She'd looked at other people's GPSs before, and none of them had a GPS as far as the one she was holding. This was practically the end of the mountain, and they'd have to climb over the other side of the mountain to find the flag. Xinyan didn't know why she was so unlucky to get a GPS like this. She didn't want to waste food. Perhaps she and Lin Yi would be the last group to complete the mission. In fact, Yuqian gave her this GPS on purpose. From his point of view, it was safer to give the furthest coordinate to Lin Yi. With Lin Yi's skills, it was a piece of cake for him to get the red flag. It's fine, the two of us got a bag of supplies too, and it's enough for 3 people. Lin Yi smiled as he tossed a bag of biscuits to Xinyan. Then, let's eat a little. Xinyan was hungry when she saw the food. If Lin Yi didn't take it out, she might be able to hold on for a bit longer. The two found a clean place and sat down. They ate some biscuits and drank some water before continuing their journey. After eating, Xinyan recovered a lot of her strength. However, the distance to the destination was too far. They walked for another 4 hours, and they were only halfway there. Lin Yi sighed when he saw that Xinyan was starting to run out of stamina. We're at least 20 kilometers away from our destination in a straight line. We need to get there before nightfall, or we won't be able to make it back in time for the training mission tomorrow. Target equals _blank. Chapter 1918. It's all my fault. I got a GPS that's so far away. I've seen other people's GPS. Some of them are very close, but the total distance is less than 20 kilometers. Xinyan smiled bitterly. Her one-way trip was equivalent to someone else's round trip. Lin Yi, naturally, knew that Yuqian did it on purpose. Only he had the ability to carry someone this far, so he left the most difficult part to him. Of course, there was another GPS that was just as difficult as Lin Yi's. It was in the opposite direction of Lin Yi at the end of the mountain range. They had to cross the mountain as well. But Yuqian threw the GPS to Tiger Right and the other two. It was a piece of cake for these 3 practitioners to get there. Lin Yi was an Earth class, but even with Xinyan, he might not be as fast as the 3 of them. It'll be fine with me here. If worst comes to worst, I'll carry you. Lin Yi smiled nonchalantly. I'll hold on a little longer. Xinyan hesitated and gritted her teeth. Although it would be easy for Lin Yi to carry her, Xinyan was shy and didn't want to risk it. Also, she was afraid that Lin Yi would be too tired. Lin Yi nodded, but after seeing how tired Xinyan was, he reached out his hand to her. Xin Yan hesitated, but still held Lin Yi's hand. This was the first time a guy held her hand, but it wasn't because they were in love, but because they were teammates helping each other. Xin Yan knew that Lin Yi wouldn't have any ulterior motives. He just wanted to help her, that's all. But although Xin Yan said that in her heart, her hands were still a little stiff. Her palms were sweaty from holding Lin Yi's hand not long ago. Lin Yi smiled, feeling Xin Yan's nervousness. "We're teammates now." Xin Yan paused for a second, but smiled and nodded. "Yeah, we're comrades in arms." The knot in Wang Xinyan's heart was unraveled, and her grip on Lin Yi's hand tightened. She didn't feel nervous anymore, but a comfortable sense of security replaced it. It was as if she had nothing to fear as long as she held onto his hand, and all difficulties were nothing more than floating clouds. Lin Yi stumbled along the way for another 10 kilometers before the sky darkened. Dark came early in late autumn. It was already 6 in the evening. Lin Yi didn't have any obstacles in his way, but Xin Yan was a girl, and it was obvious that she was a little afraid. When carrying out a mission in the primeval forest, Lin Yi would usually choose to act at night. There was a saying that went, "The night is dark and the wind is strong, and the night is the night to kill." "Let me carry you." Lin Yi looked at the coordinates on the GPS. The two of them had already passed the peak and were now going down the mountain towards their destination. The old saying was right. It was easy to go up the mountain, but difficult to go down the mountain. It was hard to go up the mountain, but it was less dangerous. It was easy to go down the mountain, but it was easy to lose your footing. Of course, this was no problem for an Earth-class practitioner like Lin Yi. He wouldn't die even if he slid down the mountain. But it wasn't the same for Xin Yan. Going down the mountain was harder than going up, especially since the sky was already dark. She didn't dare to walk too fast. That was why Lin Yi suggested carrying Xin Yan on his back. Xin Yan was hesitating. They were less than 10 kilometers away from their destination, but it was all the way down the mountain. If she kept walking like this, it would be late at night. If the two of them rested for the night, they wouldn't be able to wake up at noon the next day. They wouldn't be able to make it back in time. "Come on, my comrade." Lin Yi hung his backpack in front of his chest and squatted down. Xin Yan heard Lin Yi and didn't resist anymore. She wrapped her arms around Lin Yi's neck and laid on top of Lin Yi. But when the softness of her chest pressed against Lin Yi, Xin Yan remembered that she wasn't wearing a bra. Didn't that mean that she was lying on Lin Yi's back? But thinking about it, a normal person's back shouldn't be very sensitive. Lin Yi shouldn't feel anything. She didn't know that Lin Yi wasn't a normal person, but a special one. He was an Earth-class practitioner, and practitioners had the most flexible control over their body parts. That was why when Xin Yan laid on top of Lin Yi reacted. Fortunately, Xin Yan was behind him, and the sky was dark. She couldn't see his reaction at all. Otherwise, Lin Yi would be embarrassed. Xin Yan thought about how Lin Yi's backpack was hanging in front of him, and she wanted to help Lin Yi carry it, but then she remembered that she was still on Lin Yi's back. Even if she carried the backpack, she'd be putting the weight on Lin Yi's back. What difference would that make? Xin Yan thought that Lin Yi would be walking very slowly with her on his back, but when she looked at the trees in front of her, she realized that not only did Lin Yi not slow down, he was walking even faster than before. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he was walking like he was flying. What surprised Xin Yan the most was that Lin Yi didn't have the feeling that she had. His steps were very steady, and he didn't miss a single step. Could it be that Lin Yi had been accommodating her all this time, and that was why he was walking so slowly? Xin Yan felt even more ashamed at the thought. In fact, even if Lin Yi closed his eyes, he could still walk like he was flying, and he could see more clearly than with his eyes open. Although he felt the softness on his back, Lin Yi's attention quickly shifted to other places. What should he do with Miss and Shu? With their personalities, they might not be in a group with others. They weren't practitioners, and they were girls. Would they be in danger if they went up the mountain? However, phones weren't allowed to be used here, and they were locked in a cabinet in the barracks. Even if Lin Yi wanted to contact Miss, it was impossible. He could only ask Chen Yutian to take care of Mississippi. But thinking about it, With Yushu around, Qin Yuqian wouldn't give them complicated tasks. Finally, Lin Yi arrived at his destination. It had to be said that Lin Yi had been moving very fast this way. He'd covered 10 kilometers in less than half an hour, and this was under Lin Yi's deliberate control. He didn't want to scare Sun Yan too much. Normally, he'd only run for 10 minutes, but Lin Yi didn't want to scare Sun Yan. Sun Yan was too tired, and she fell asleep on Lin Yi's shoulder. It was a comfortable and safe feeling, as if she had forgotten all her worries when she laid on Lin Yi's broad shoulder. Although it was only half an hour, Sun Yan still slept soundly. Chapter 1919. Lin Yi's sudden stop woke Sun Yan up. She didn't know how long she slept for, but when she opened her eyes and saw the flag not far from her, she woke up immediately. We're here? We're here already? Sun Yan couldn't believe it. Lin Yi had been carrying her for so long, and they're already here? You're awake? Lin Yi knew that Sun Yan was asleep, and Lin Yi was the first to notice her waking up. I'm sorry. I'm too tired and fell asleep, Sun Yan said apologetically. There's nothing to be sorry about. Lin Yi smiled. That's how it should be. Rest up, and we'll continue our journey tomorrow. After putting Sun Yan down, Lin Yi took the flag and put it in his bag before setting up the tent. In an SUV at the foot of the mountain, Qin Yuqian and a few other warriors were staring at a computer screen. When Yuqian saw the GPS in Lin Yi's hand coincide with the flag's coordinates, he knew that they had arrived at their destination. Yuqian let out a sigh of relief. Although Lin Yi was slower than Pan, Hu, and the others, Lin Yi was carrying a girl. However, in the last 10 kilometers, Lin Yi's speed was very fast. Yuqian guessed that Lin Yi was carrying Sun Yan. Lin Yi, why don't I help you? You should eat something too. Carrying me on your back must be tiring, right? Sun Yan said as she watched Lin Yi assembling the tent. It's fine, you eat first. You've never done this before, and it'll take a lot of time to assemble it according to the blueprint, Lin Yi said as he moved the parts of the tent. Sun Yan was startled. Didn't he look at the blueprint? But when she took a closer look, Lin Yi really didn't look at the blueprint. It was folded on the side, and Lin Yi didn't even open it. You've assembled it before? Sun Yan was surprised. And these military tents are assembled the same way. I used to do it all the time. Lin Yi sighed. It was as if he had returned to those days of war, camping with his teammates every night, assembling the tents. Pangolin was the most enthusiastic when it came to assembling the tents, and sleeping was his favorite thing to do. Lin Yi's heart sank at the thought of Pangolin. He still hadn't found the culprit who killed Pangolin. Although Lin Yi had destroyed the common house Yu, they were just accomplices, not the mastermind. The mastermind should be the organization called Red Conches. Although Lin Yi had killed 2 important members of Red Conches, it was far from enough. Lin Yi's goal was to destroy the whole family. Only by destroying this organization would he be able to vent his hatred. He thought of Ziyu, wondering how she was doing. According to Faubert, she and She both got into Songshan's first school, but She reached the minimum requirement to be a free student, and Ziyu barely reached the minimum requirement to be a self-funded student. But with Faubert there, Ziyu didn't have to pay. Pengzhan Industries wasn't in trouble yet, so Faubert still had the absolute right to speak. Even after Housen took over, they wouldn't pursue something as small as this. They didn't have the time to. This time, Lin Yi planned to go visiting Ziyu and see how she was. Lin Yi cared about this girl quite a bit, and the reason was that she was Pangolin's sister. In the past, Sun Yan was curious. You used to assemble these? I used to. Lin Yi smiled bitterly, but for some reason, he didn't hide anything from Sun Yan. In the past, my life and yours were 2 different worlds. Perhaps it was because of Lin Yi's trust in Sun Yan, or perhaps Lin Yi didn't need to hide anything with his current strength. Those enemies of his weren't enemies to Lin Yi anymore, and Lin Yi wasn't afraid of their revenge. Lin Yi was a golden class back then, so he was afraid that his old enemies would come looking for him. But now that Lin Yi was an Earth class, the enemies he faced were all at least Mystic class. There was no point in hiding it anymore. Ah, Xin Yan paused. You mean before you came Songzhan? Something like that. That time when I met you on the train was the beginning of my assimilation into this city. Lenny nodded. Xin Yan didn't ask what Lenny did before. Everyone had their secrets, and she didn't want to put Lin E in a difficult position. Let's eat something and rest. Ah, okay. Lin E put the last part of the tent in place. The tent was now complete. Lin E and Xin Yan sat in front of the tent, opening a pack of compressed biscuits under the moonlight. Xin Yan was hungry, but she didn't eat too much, which surprised Lin E. You want to eat more? Xin Yan blushed. It's not convenient to go to the bathroom here. I don't want to eat too much. We're deep in the forest. Just find a random place. Lin E smiled. It's fine. Eat more. We still have a long way to go tomorrow. Lin E tried to persuade her, but Xin Yan still didn't eat too much. She drank quite a bit of mineral water, though. The two of them had brought a lot of water. Perhaps Xin Yan was trying to help Lin E lighten up, and drinking water could fill up their stomachs. I'm full. Let's rest. Xin Yan took a deep breath. The air here is so good. Yeah, there's no noise and waste from the city. If we weren't in a rush, this would be a good place for a vacation. Lin E said, Yeah, let's rest. Xin Yan nodded. She was about to enter the tent when she saw that Lin E wasn't moving. Lin E, aren't you coming to rest with us? You go, I'll be fine outside. Lin E didn't enter the tent. It's fine. Didn't we sleep together back in the barracks? Xin Yan said, seeing that Lin E wasn't feeling comfortable. It wasn't that there were a lot of people, but now it's just the two of us. Lin E was worried that Xin Yan would be embarrassed, but Xin Yan was being more generous. I trust you. Xin Yan lowered her head, not saying anything else. She was actually asking a guy to sleep with her. It would have been inconceivable in the past, but now it was natural. Okay. Lin E nodded after a bit of hesitation. Chapter 1920. Wang Xinyan's scent was beneficial to his training, so Lin E didn't want to waste this opportunity. He might not get another chance like this when he got back to school. Sleeping together in the barracks with other people was considered a group activity, but now that Lin E and Wang Xinyan were in the same tent, the atmosphere was a little awkward, but this scene gave Lin E a familiar feeling. It was also in a tent with a beautiful and gentle girl. Lin E seemed to have experienced something similar. Was it Ning? Lin E shook his head. They were in a cave, not in a tent. But in the depths of his memory, it seemed like today had happened before. Was it a past life? Or was it a dream? Or was it fate between him and Wang Xinyan? If it was the latter, then it was possible. They were fated to be together, sitting in the same seat a few times, and now they were in the same bed. How many times could there be such a coincidence in life? Are you asleep? Wang Xinyan's words interrupted Lin Yi's thoughts, bringing Lin E back to reality. No, why? Lin E asked. I'm a little scared. It's so quiet here. Wang Xinyan entered the tent and felt that the surroundings were eerily quiet. She was in the barracks with her classmates, and there were soldiers patrolling outside. It had never been this quiet. You'll get used to it. This mountain is a dead mountain. There aren't any beasts, but it's safe. Lin E said, some of the mountains are not quiet, but they're even scarier at night. What Lin E said was the truth. The night in the tropical forest was the scariest. Not only did they have to be on guard against enemies, but they also had to be on guard against all kinds of beasts and poisonous insects. Here, however, there was no danger at all. Can you talk to me? Wang Xinyan was tired, but she didn't sleep too much. She remembered that Lin E wasn't asleep yet, so she said apologetically, right, you haven't slept yet. Why don't you rest first? Don't worry about me. I'm a cultivator. I'm fine even if I don't sleep. Lin E shook his head and smiled. Lin E, what do you think we should pursue in life? Xinyan had been lost for a while now, not knowing the meaning of life. Was she just going to be a sacrifice for her family? Everyone has their own pursuits. I can't say for sure. Lin E was a little puzzled as to why Xinyan would ask such a profound question. Then what is your pursuit? Xinyan regretted asking the question. I'm sorry, I was just asking randomly. It's fine if you don't want to tell me. Once a long time ago, I also asked myself what my pursuit and goal was. But during that period of time, I was very confused. I didn't know what I was pursuing and what my goal was. Every day, I seemed to be doing things that I didn't like, but I had to do them. Lenny said, at that time, I really didn't know what I was pursuing, and I didn't know if I would spend the rest of my life in such a muddle. Oh. What happened after that? Sinyan was a little surprised. Lin, he had that kind of feeling in time. After that, I came to Songshan, where I had my own love, my own friends. I wanted to protect them, to give them a better life. That was my pursuit and goal. Lin, he said, only by becoming stronger can I achieve all of that. I see. Then I'm a little envious of you. Sinyan smiled bitterly. I've never had many friends since I was young, and I've never fallen for a guy before. I don't know what true love is, and I don't have any close friends either. Ah, I'm not your friend? Lin, he asked with a smile. You? Of course you are. I think I've found it. I've said a lot of things in front of you, things I've never done before. Sinyan smiled. But you don't need me to protect you. You're the one protecting me instead. Friends help each other, of course. There's no rule that says who has to protect who. Lin, he said. Yeah, but is there really such a thing as pure friendship between a guy and a girl? Sinyan asked all of a sudden. Lin, he blinked. He was about to say that there was, but wasn't there one between him and her? But he shook his head inwardly. Pure? He'd had thoughts when he saw Sinyan naked, and he'd had a physiological reaction when he felt the softness of her breasts. Was that pure? Lin, he couldn't help but have a reaction when he smelled the scent on Sinyan's body. It was a good thing that the tent was dark, and even with the moonlight, they could only see each other's faces clearly. Sinyan had a weird expression on her face as she looked at Lin Yi's stunned face. She turned her body sideways, wanting to chat more comfortably with Lin Yi, but something hard was pressing down on her. You brought ham sausages? Sinyan asked subconsciously, but after she said that, she immediately realized that something was wrong. She also knew what she had grabbed. Her face immediately turned red, and she quickly let go of her hand. She turned around and snorted. Sure enough, pervert. That's a normal reaction. Lin, he smiled bitterly, a little helpless. We're so close, and you smell so good. Sinyan's face reddened even more at Lin Yi's mention of her scent. I'm sleepy. I fell asleep. Lin didn't know what to say. He shook his head and calmed himself down before channeling the second stage of the art of dragon mastery. Sinyan waited for a while and felt a little apologetic when she saw that Lin Yi wasn't talking. She'd been in biology classes before, and she knew that this was a normal reaction from Lin Yi. He didn't do it on purpose, and it would have been a problem if he hadn't. But she didn't want to apologize, and so she fell asleep. Sinyan woke up in the latter half of the night. She drunk too much water earlier, and her body was reacting. She wanted to go to the bathroom, but it was pitch black outside. She hesitated for a moment before reaching out to touch Lin Yi. Lin Yi, what's wrong? Lin Yi asked, opening his eyes. Lin Yi opened his eyes all of a sudden, not the slightest bit sleepy on his face. Sinyan jumped. You're not asleep? Target equals _blank. Chapter 1921. Oh, I'm resting. There aren't many people here. I'm afraid something might happen. Lin, he said, not bothering to explain about his training. Other practitioners needed to sleep. After all, only the art of dragon mastery allowed him to train in the jade space without sleeping. Sinyan felt a little moved. Lin didn't sleep because he was afraid of danger. Sinyan felt a little embarrassed at the thought. She'd called him a pervert before. If he was a pervert, why didn't he do something to her when she was asleep? I'm sorry. I shouldn't have called you that. Sinyan said. Called me that? Since when did you curse me? Lin, he didn't know what Sinyan was talking about. Are you dreaming or something? No, it was before I slept. I called you a pervert. Sinyan said, a little embarrassed. Oh, it's nothing. Lin, he smiled bitterly. All right, why did you call me? Ah, I. Xin Yan only remembered her goal after Lin Yi's reminder. I. I drank too much water, and I want to go out, but I'm a little scared. I see. Let's go. I'll stay with you. Lin Yi sat up, but realized that Xin Yan might misunderstand if he said that. I mean, I'll be watching you from afar. Ugh. I don't mean watching you. I mean guarding you. Lin Yi realized that the more he said, the more ambiguous it got. He might as well not say it. Okay. Xin Yan understood what Lin Yi meant. She walked out of the tent first, blushing a little. Xin Yan looked left and right. She and Lin Yi had chosen a flat, empty space. It was precisely because of this that Lin Yi chose this place. There really wasn't anything to hide in if they wanted to go to the bathroom. Xin Yan had no choice but to run towards the forest. She ran for a few hundred meters before disappearing into a thicket. Lin Yi followed slowly, but didn't get too close. He only needed to sense where Xin Yan was. Lin Yi didn't use his consciousness to sense where Xin Yan was, either. He'd be able to see her clearly that way. Xin Yan was in a hurry, but Lin Yi wasn't far from her. Wouldn't he be able to hear her if she were to make a sound that could be heard in the silence of the night? Xin Yan couldn't pee at the thought of that embarrassing, shushing sound. Lin Yi waited for a long time, but didn't hear any movement from Xin Yan. It was a little strange, but he didn't want her to feel awkward, so he didn't ask or walk over. Instead, he entered the jade space and used his consciousness to sense what was going on in the distance. He saw Xin Yan squatting there with a blushing face. Lin Yi quickly looked away, and just as Lin Yi was about to retract his gaze, he saw two people about 20 meters in front of Xin Yan. Two people in camouflage clothes. They didn't stand out in the dark of the forest, but Lin Yi could see them clearly with his consciousness. One of them was a Chinese, and the other was a foreigner with blonde hair. What were they doing here in the middle of the night? Thinking of this, Lin Yi didn't retract his divine sense, but locked onto these two people. Audie, I brought the goods. Do you have a money ready? It was the Chinese who spoke. The two seemed to have just met. Baldy, why are you here? Wasn't it brother who delivered the goods before? Audie recognized the man, but it wasn't the person he knew before. It was one of the people he knew, so he asked cautiously. Brother has been sent to the Fire Wolf Gang for a new mission. I'll be taking over here. The man called Baldy said proudly. From now on, I'll be in charge of the border drug trade. Oh, then I'll call you Baldy Bro from now on. Congratulations. The foreigner spoke fluent Chinese. Ha ha ha, you flatter me. Bald Wolf laughed. He was obviously happy about his promotion. Xin Yan was nervous to begin with, and the sudden burst of laughter made her scream out of reflex. Baldy's voice was very soft, and Lin Yi could only tell what they were saying through his lips. The laughter, however, was a little too loud in this quiet mountain. Xin Yan didn't think that there would be other people around, and the voice clearly wasn't Lin Yi's. It was hoarse and unpleasant, and it was a man's voice. Xin Yan screamed subconsciously, but someone covered her mouth before she could finish. Xin Yan was even more shocked. She just heard the laughter, and now she was being kidnapped? But Lin Yi's voice rang in her ears. Don't worry, it's me. Xin Yan relaxed when she heard it was Lin Yi. But now that she relaxed, all the pee she'd been holding in came out. Lin Yi was kneeling in front of her, covering her mouth, and her pee was all over Lin Yi's pants. Xin Yan was embarrassed, but she couldn't control herself. She wanted to dig a hole in the ground and hide in it. How embarrassing was this? She'd let Lin Yi see her upper body, and now he'd seen her lower body, and now she'd peed all over him. But although Lin Yi saw Xin Yan pee all over himself, it was a rather romantic scene, but Lin Yi wasn't in the mood to peek. His attention was on the two people not far away. Lin Yi wasn't a nosy person, and what these two were doing here had nothing to do with him. But when Autiti mentioned Debro, it caught Lin Yi's attention. Wasn't Jiangwen's brother in Jianda called Debro? Just when Lin Yi wanted to confirm if this Debro was in Jianda, the bald wolf's words confirmed Lin Yi's suspicions. Since the wolf mentioned the fire wolves, then Debro had to be in Jianda. Since it was related to the fire wolves and in Jianda, Lin Yi didn't mind creating some accidents for these two. There were people in gangs that had deep grudges against him. Sinyan's scream caught Autidi's attention as well, but it was dark on the mountain, and he couldn't see far. Sinyan was squatting on the ground, and there were bushes in front of her. They couldn't see each other at all. "What's that sound?" Autidi asked. "Is it the border patrol?" Chapter 1922. That shouldn't be the case. I've already asked around. These days are the military training days for Donghai Industry University, and the border guards are using this mountain as a training ground. There's no way they would be patrolling at this time. Baldy frowned. Donghai Industry University's military training wasn't a secret, and Baldy didn't need to ask around to get the information. It was absolutely true. Then could it be that there are students training nearby? Audie asked. "That's impossible. The Red Conches, have been doing this for years, and we know the range of the training every year. This place is too far, and it's impossible for the students to come and go in 2 days. Those students aren't us, so how could they walk this far?" Baldy shook his head. "Maybe we heard wrongly. There's an owl nearby, and it sounded similar to the sound just now. If the border guards were here, then it would be a gunshot. You and I wouldn't be able to stand here and talk." "You're right." Audie nodded after not hearing any strange noises for a long time. But at that moment, the sound came again. The sound came from Lin Yi's mouth, mimicking the sound of an owl. "Fuck, it really is an owl. That scared me to death." Audie heard it clearly this time and shook his head. "No matter what, let's hurry up and trade. The goods are here. Check them." Baldy placed a black suitcase in front of Audie. Here, this is the money. Check it too." Audie handed a suitcase to Baldy. The two were old partners, and they didn't need to be too cautious. They checked the contents of the suitcase and closed it after finding nothing wrong. Lin Yi saw the contents of the suitcase clearly. One was filled with drugs, and the other was filled with US dollars. Lin Yi wasn't interested in the drugs, but he was interested in the US dollars. Although he had extorted $2 billion from Jiang Wen, Lin Yi didn't have much to spend since Fatty Lai had to build his company. This suitcase of US dollars could help alleviate some of the financial pressure on Lin Yi. Most importantly, Lin Yi suddenly thought of Xiaoka from the orphanage. She probably needed money, right? With that in mind, Lin Yi decided that he was going to take advantage of the situation. He whispered into Sinyan's ear. "There's 2 bad guys. Stay here and don't move. I'll take care of them." Sinyan wasn't scared anymore. All that was left was shyness. She nodded. It was only then that Lin Yi remembered that he was still covering Sinyan's mouth. He quickly let go and walked over to the 2 drug dealers. However, the 2 drug dealers were still talking about something after the transaction. "I say, Brother Bald Wolf, why are there fewer and fewer goods recently? We have a shortage over there. Can you increase the supply?" Audie asked as he weighed the suitcase in his hand. Our original partner, House Yu, has some problems. Without the support of House Yu's masters, our authority in the Golden Triangle has been declining. Bald Wolf sighed. "I've already talked to the boss. He'll talk to the higher-ups and see if they can send a few practitioners over. That way, we can regain our authority." "All right, this is your gang's internal matter. I have no right to interfere. I'll be leaving first. I don't feel at ease staying at the border for another minute." Audie nodded and prepared to leave. Bald Wolf took the money and prepared to leave as well. However, before the 2 of them could take a step, they groaned and fell to the ground. These people weren't even practitioners, and Lin Yi could knock them out without a sound. Lin Yi didn't kill them. Although it was easy for Lin Yi to kill these 2, Lin Yi still wanted to ask Bald Wolf a few questions. Lin Yi didn't want to force a confession out of someone like Baldy. He took out a couple of needles and stuck them into Baldy's head, waking him up as well. His eyes were a little glazed over. "I'll ask you a few questions. Answer them one by one. Don't hide anything," Lin Yi said sternly. "Yes." Bald Wolf seemed to have entered a hypnotic state. He had lost his consciousness. This method was taught to Lin Yi by his master. Although it was effective, it could only be used on low-leveled people. After all, a practitioner's will was extremely strong. Even golden-class practitioners had strong spiritual power. Lin Yi couldn't hypnotize them with this method. However, This method was the fastest and most effective way to deal with such a small fry. However, after using it, there would be a certain side effect, which was that the person would forget a part of their memory. This memory varied from person to person. The shortest would be 1 day, and the longest would be 4 to 5 days. Therefore, they would not remember being hypnotized at all. Lenny planned on using the same method on the foreigner, making them forget what happened recently. That way, he'd be able to take the box of dollars without anyone noticing. As for these two, Lenny planned on handing them over to Chen Yutian for him, Yang Huaijuan, and Ling Shan to work together. After all, capturing so many drugs was a huge achievement. Lenny didn't mind letting these two use their full potential. It'd be a waste to just kill them. What's your name? What do you do? What organization do you belong to? Lenny asked. I'm Tu Lang, Bald Wolf in the underworld. I'm in charge of the drug trade for Red Conscious. Bald Wolf said. Where's the headquarters of Red Conscious? How many people are there? Who's the boss? What's his relationship with the Fire Wolves? Lenny asked. The headquarters of Red Conscious is overseas. I don't know where it is. The one in China is just a branch, Bald Wolf said. Bald Wolf said, the Red Conch branch is in Qing Run City. The first master is dead, and the second master has been arrested. Currently, the third master is in charge. I don't know the third master's name because everyone calls him Third Master. Our Red Conches and the Fire Wolves are brother gangs. We help each other, but I don't know the details. Lin Yi was surprised by Bald Wolf's words. He didn't expect Red Conch's headquarters to be overseas. He didn't even know where it was. The one in China was just a branch. According to what he said, the big boss that Feng Tianlong killed was just a person in charge of Red Conch's branch. Red Conch's had a lot of resources. Is there a cultivator guarding the Red Conch? What's the highest level? Lin Yi asked. The third boss is a practitioner himself. He's at the peak of the late phase of the mystic class. Other than him, there's only one master at the early phase of the golden class. Bald Wolf said, Red Conch's business is with House Yu. All the masters are from House Yu. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.